In this video, we will cover pretty much all the differences I could find between the manga and anime for XXXHOLiC Kei, the Midsummer Night's Dream movie, and the OVAs. As well, due to the voting, I have included, at least when I started tracking this, especially all the camera angle changes, roughly. But going forward, I probably won't be including that. Suffice to say, in many scenes, the anime adapts the manga faithfully, but at a slightly different camera angle. So going forward, I will probably just stick with a general summary and then point out when it's significant, but in this case, I have left it in, and we will see how many changes that goes. So let's move right into the movie. XXXHOLiC Midsummer Night's Dream has no manga equivalent, but does reference chapters 1, 12, 16, and 17. And note, while this movie is not canon to the manga, it is canon to the anime events as we see in the later anime Kobato. The side street Watanuki is walking down is different between accounts, and the dialogue slightly differs between accounts. The spirits are also visualized slightly differently, but are pretty accurate overall. The continued smothering by the spirits is a unique extension to the anime, and the similarities end there as Domiki approaches, given this isn't a recap of the series' start, but a unique story set after Season 1. When the anime covers Yuko's monologue, the fog is shown to be a spirit instead of the usual smoke effect, but at least this time, unlike Season 1, Yuko is seen in the shot. That said, emphasis is added in the anime since there's no text bubble in the way, and Yuko is looking up in the anime instead of over her shoulder as in the manga. As part of the anime's references to Chapter 1, it has Yuko wearing her first outfit again. In the manga, Yuko never wears the same outfit twice, except when it involves serious matters of time, space, or dreams. Yuko mentions she has been slowly granting Watanuki's wish as spirits are drawn to him less. This wasn't the case in the manga, as she would never actually grant his wish until just before she died, and even then she only partially granted it, as he would still see them, but they wouldn't be attracted to him anymore. The anime has Watanuki clean the storehouse outside again. This is a reference to Chapter 17, where he does this before Nanami obtained the monkey's paw. As such, the paw tube and another like it is present in the scene, but like in Season 1, many of the contents are different or located in different spots. But the elephant remains present from the manga. Also, Yuko is in both accounts drinking something, though the cups differ slightly between accounts. But the anime doesn't have her food dish present this time. Also, some dialogue lines are identical, but with more echoed responses, instead of the other lines in the manga. The rest of the dialogue is unique to the anime and serves to set up the collection theme of the movie. When Watanuki discovers Mokina, this is by tapping him with the duster in the anime versus grabbing him in the manga. The dialogue is also changed between accounts, and Mokina goes for a face hug attack instead of running away as in the manga. This section is a reference to Chapter 1's first encounter with Rin, as Watanuki, Maru, and Moro essentially mention while peeking through the doors that another customer is caught in Yuko's grip, but like in Season 1, this is in the middle of the conversation instead of before the sharp explanation. Since it's just a reference, the dialogue slightly differs, also due to the three's reactions upon Yuko shouting. From here on out, the anime is unique, but does have a few points to note. Yuko pulling down her dress strap references Chapter 12's scene where Yuko suggests a summer date for Watanuki and Himawari. Domiki saving Watanuki references Chapter 16's scene where Domiki saves Watanuki from falling off the building during the angel incident. The anime adds a short line by Yuko and follow-up questions by Watanuki that would hint at her past relationships possible with Chloe, but for which we get no answers on. The manga never had this extra slight implication of a possible painful love or lovesickness. This conversation and transaction with the Tsubasa group, as we'll see in more depth in the next video, is completely unique to the anime, and the group wears unique clothes and is on a unique journey through the land of birds, and even in future episodes, XXXHOLiC won't feature the bell for summoning Watanuki. Yuko's toast, while unique and generic, may be a vague way of honoring or remembering Chloe Reed, and so adds more to Yuko and Chloe's relationship than the manga shows. Next, we'll cover XXXHOLiC Kei, aka Season 2. Episode 1 covers chapters 40 through 41 and 43 through 44. The anime emphasizes the wall more here instead of the entire left side of the street, and features Watanuki looking around before seeing Himawari. The anime also lacks the pole from the manga. The anime slightly reorders when Himawari turns around. The ceiling wood is slightly different. The anime specifies the room around them, unlike the manga. The anime also adds an angry symbol to the shot. When Mokona wakes up, he goes back to sleep. In the manga, he giggles at Watanuki. As such, a line is added, and the next lines are said with Mokona in Watanuki's hand instead of on the ground before on Watanuki's shoulder with his glasses. The anime also adds a line by Mokona. The anime uniquely adds the twins coming to get Watanuki, thereby waking Mokona. In the manga, they move straight to the next scene with Yuko. The anime uniquely introduces Kohane via the television. In the manga, she wasn't introduced for a couple more volumes until Watanuki comes across her in town, and Himawari remarks seeing her on the TV. As a result of this change, the twins are added to the scene as they cower at the show, and the conversation will uniquely revolve around the TV for a while. The food and dishes slightly differ between accounts. The background behind Yuko differs between accounts, and so does the rice on her chin. Also, she doesn't have the chopsticks up towards her mouth in the anime. The anime changes the visual of Watanuki here and doesn't have the two still eating. I'll give the anime credit for being pretty accurate with the background here, but this show doesn't initially feature Mokona, and instead has him approach with unique lines to take the rice. Additional scene emphasis is changed throughout the scene, for example Watanuki's pose and Yuko eating. Also, the twins are added again in the anime. In addition to small angle changes, Yuko has a clean face in the anime versus rice in the manga, but most obvious is the anime adding a tub hitting Watanuki's head and comments about the twins instead of simple irritation. Mokona doesn't drop the dish at this remark in the anime as in the manga. The anime might add one extra line here. How Mokona goes into the air is slightly different, and the twins are added in the anime. The anime doesn't specify the practice range line here. The anime omits a panel showing more of the cleaning. The anime omits some lines by Domiki. The anime is zoomed out for this portion instead of zoomed in. Watanuki's pose is slightly different between accounts, and extra emphasis is added on the web breaking. The anime doesn't show Watanuki picking off Spiderweb from his clothes as in the manga. Watanuki's line might be changed. Again, the background visual is altered and umbrella changed like in Season 1, but the anime often omits showing the school gate during scene transitions. The lunch visuals are slightly different. The background visuals are different again, and from now on I'm going to be just saying BGV when there's a background visual change. The anime also lacks a breath cloud or something. The anime changes Himawari's line to laughter. The anime adds an utterance by Watanuki. Watanuki's line is reordered slightly to before the zoom on Domiki. The anime continues the scene. The manga black screen this panel. Since the anime distances itself from Tsubasa, Yuko is reading a magazine instead of finishing a call with the Tsubasa group as in the manga. Hence, Yuko and Mokona's positions are different. Also, the anime adds the twins to the scene as they again read The Town with No People from Chobits. The anime adds extra emphasis to Yuko grabbing the web. The anime adds a line by Yuko instead of showing a zoomed out panel. As such, Watanuki's line is cut a bit. Backgrounds are added in the anime. BGV and black screen panel in the manga. The anime focuses on Yuko before the visual Domiki, but only in silhouette form. The anime adds a shot of Watanuki kneeling. The anime shows Domiki getting up, and so also the lovely doors behind him. The ceiling light differs between accounts, and the anime uniquely focuses on a tree. The anime then adds camera angles to the wind shot. The next shot first shows Watanuki heading down the street instead of emphasizing Domiki leaving his temple. The anime reorders some angles for this line. The anime shows Watanuki's eye patch before Domiki's reaction. In the manga, the reaction was shown first. Domiki is focused on here instead of Watanuki. The positions are different between accounts. Their arms are down in the anime but up a bit in the manga. BGV, also the anime uniquely emphasizes Watanuki's eye. Apart from lacking a park transition shot, the anime has the weather as foggy rather than the manga's clear skies. The anime also extends Yuko's arrival. As with Season 1, the animal benches are different between accounts, and only 2 appear in the anime versus 3 in the manga. Some scene emphasis is changed between accounts, including a normal view instead of the manga's black screen and smoke effect panel. BGV, also the anime shows Yuko here instead of Domiki and shows the shot of Watanuki a little earlier than the manga does. The anime also changes the visuals in the hallway, including of the students nearby. The anime also omits Yuko's last line to the conversation. Since the anime covered Yuri's transaction in Season 1, it skips to Chapter 44 for this next scene. Also, the anime omits Watanuki's first line. Himura's line might be changed to be about warmth in the anime versus longer days in the manga. The anime cuts almost an entire page of dialogue. Also, the anime adds extra wares by Watanuki and then changes a line by Himura. The bookstore name might be different as the anime is known to change these details, but I don't have a Japanese manga copy to confirm. Also, the anime cuts a line by Himura and changes some emphasis. Also BGV. Just notice the anime lacks some cool details in the temple architecture. The anime changes a line and cuts several more lines by Watanuki. Also, the trees to the side have lost their leaves in the anime, but not in the manga. This line might be changed. The anime cuts some lines since this eye visual is the first time it happened in the anime. In the manga, during the Yuri chapters, this overhead of the town was seen while he talked to Himura. As such, the visual at this time in the manga was just of a forest, likely on that spirit mountain. But the anime does incorporate this immediately after the town visuals, even adding additional spirit visuals, though this makes it slightly more confusing how the other person is traveling in the anime. Anyway, this change also changes Watanuki's reaction to the vision and cuts a line. Domiki's line is reordered with one of Watanuki's. Also, I just now noticed the school clothes are still the winter outfits, but in the manga it has become spring or was nearing summer, so the clothes are the summer outfits instead, hence the tree leaf difference from before. The anime cuts a thought by Watanuki. The anime cuts a line by Domiki. The anime cuts a line by Watanuki. The anime lacks the symbols Haruka engraved on the storehouse, but I think the OVAs will later correct this. Their lines are likely changed or cut slightly in the anime. The anime zoomed out instead of focusing on Domiki. The duo haven't gotten closer to the door in the anime as in the manga. The anime now emphasizes the book titles, albeit only 2 of them. The manga did this a panel earlier as well before showing several titles that I can't compare with my translated manga. The anime then adds extra emphasis shots. The anime adds a unique Alice in Wonderland theme set for this scene. The manga had Yuko and company doing a summertime flowing salmon meal, since it was summer instead of winter. This will also change many lines throughout, but much is still verbatim. Mokuna is sleeping in the anime versus awake in the manga. The book titles might be different between accounts. As BGV. It took this anime unique emphasis on the eye patch for me to notice the anime has it in the same style as before, but in the manga it is a different style. The anime adds an extra realization emphasis shot on Watanuki. Yuko asks for brandy in the anime but sake in the manga. These last changes also have the twins playing X's and O's on Mokuna instead of echoing Mokuna's drink order as in the manga. The anime also uniquely features a hookah machine. Did Yuko ever have one in the manga? The prior changes also extend the scene with Mokuna. Episode 2 covers chapters 44 through 46 and 52, sort of inspired by a conversation. As with the last episode, the anime omits Haruka's symbol in the storehouse. The anime also shows a wider shot of the entrance. The anime adds emphasis on the books. Camera angle change. The anime changes the scene a bit by having Domiki close a book and change his line. The anime also lacks the emphasis on Himura's book. The anime shows the door open. The manga only had this hood. Also, like before, the season for the uniform is different between accounts. The anime lacks some books on the floor and changes the desk items slightly. BGV and Watanuki's embellishments are extended in the anime. The anime adds emphasis on the books. The anime zooms in on all 4 of the wards. The manga only zooms in on the 4th, and its art is slightly changed. The angle for the shot differs between accounts, and the next visual is different. The bento is slightly different between accounts. Watanuki's first line is changed slightly. The anime lacks Watanuki resealing the thermos, and instead shows Domoki eating while adding a line by Watanuki. The anime changes some visuals slightly and adds a line by Watanuki. The anime adds an exterior shot in place of the finished bento box. The anime doesn't have Watanuki open the book as in the manga. The anime cuts a line by Watanuki. Some visuals are changed a bit. The words in the book are slightly different between accounts, and lines are added by Watanuki. Also, some visuals are slightly changed. Domoki's line might be changed. The two say this in the same place. In the manga, they were moving toward the table, hence some visuals are changed. The anime might omit Watanuki's last line. The anime doesn't have the book rustling before Watanuki notices, as he just senses something with the book. The manga has his reaction to the rustling. The words rustling animation is slightly different between accounts, as is how they collect in the center. Also, the anime lacks the smoke effects from the manga. The anime has the bookworm change direction. The manga appears to have it go straight for the book without turning. The visuals of the bookworm eating slightly differ between accounts. Now is a good chance to highlight the bookworm slightly differs between accounts, looking more generic in the anime versus comprised of scribbles in the manga. The anime changes the visual here, lacking Yuko waving from the door during this line. The anime adds a line by Mokina. The anime might reorder some lines and might change Yuko and Watanuki's lines. The anime cuts extra yeses by Watanuki. The anime extends Yuko examining the wards. The anime zooms on Mokina earlier than the manga does. The anime uniquely shows Yuko taking the wards into her hands. The anime adds the rustling of the box. The anime slightly changes how the bookworm eats the words. This word's visual is significantly changed, although this appears to be an animation error as the same animal is on the next word too, which shouldn't be the case. The anime adds a reaction by Watanuki. The anime slightly changes when Yuko notices the book. The anime adds a sigh by Watanuki. The anime adds Yuko turning for this first part of her lines. The anime uniquely shows Watanuki turning around. This line is changed based on the Alice vs. Soman accounts. The anime adds a line by Yuko and changes Mokina's line. Domoki's next line is also changed in line with the T vs. Soman. The anime uniquely extends the scene. The manga moves straight to the next day. The anime adds something on the walls of the school. Watanuki's line might be changed. The room differs between accounts. The anime adds a fish out the window. Watanuki's embellishments slightly differ between accounts and some lines might be cut. Watanuki's line might be different. The anime lacks the cover pattern on both sides of the book that was seen in the manga. Also BGV. The anime adds lines by Watanuki and cuts one line. The anime changes the hand in the visual to a bird. The case faces upwards in the anime but downward in the manga. This may have been a printing error or a drawing error, but the anime shows both of the cat girl's arms as normal, whereas the manga has one arm pitch black for the shot. The anime slightly extends her grabbing the fish and landing and eating the fish. The anime omits a visual of Watanuki and adds a line by Watanuki. The anime adds an utterance by Watanuki. The anime cuts a line by Watanuki. The anime cuts an utterance by the cat girl. The anime has Yuko and Mokina playing chess on a table while Yuko sits in a chair. The manga had them sitting on the porch by some sort of, I assume, a Mokina incense burner. Meanwhile, the anime also added a warm piece to Yuko's attire since the anime has this in a colder month. Yuko grabs her glass. In the manga, she doesn't drink from her glass for this entire scene. Watanuki specifies the cat girl's clothes in the anime instead of saying normal clothes in the manga. The anime uniquely extends the scene with Watanuki's reaction. The anime adds a segment showing other students cleaning too. The anime omits emphasis on Watanuki's broom. Also, his eye patch type is still different throughout this episode. Domoki's line might be different. Domoki is given an extra line. The shot of Himoi is too high to show her leg up slightly as in the manga. The anime omits a line by Watanuki. The anime omits another line by Watanuki and has an utterance instead. The anime cuts more lines by Watanuki and changes the expressions he makes in the background. The anime adds a line by Watanuki. The anime omits a panel of Watanuki running off. The start to this conversation is cut and then completely changed before uniquely adding a discussion about the TV show featuring Kohane, which won't be covered until the next volume in the manga. Watanuki's line and the accompanying text is changed. The anime cuts laughter by Watanuki. The anime adds a car horn and a subsequent crash upon a woman, which would have killed Watanuki had he not stopped for the vision. In the manga, he would have died to a falling electrical box instead. The anime then adds a crash aftermath scene and changes Watanuki's lines. The anime slightly changes the positioning of the Tengu. The anime cuts a line by Watanuki and adds lines by the Tengu and Watanuki, including some in line with the car crash while adding a siren in the background. I may forget from time to time, so I'll just say the anime doesn't always show lead panels to locations. But more importantly, here the anime adds the twins combing Yuko's hair while she sits in her chair on the porch. The manga didn't have the twins here, and Yuko's chair was in the yard under an umbrella. The anime adds a line by one of the Tengu. The anime omits Watanuki's glancing reaction in the background. The anime uniquely has Yuko command Mokona to retrieve the fan. In the manga, Yuko reaches down and takes the fan herself. The anime has the Tengu react to this instead of Watanuki. The anime shows all the Tengu react, the manga only shows 3. The anime extends the pipe fox latching onto Watanuki. Mokona jumps off the chair, in the manga he stays on the chair. Episode 3 covers Chapter 46. The anime slightly extends the arrival sequence. The windows of the building do not appear all smashed up in the anime as in the manga, and other small details in architecture and destruction are changed. The anime reorders the zoom shot of the building and the pipe fox's emergence. Watanuki's line might be changed. Also, the anime cuts a line by the Tengu. The anime reattributes these lines to the other Tengu. The anime shows more of the Tengu reacting than the manga does. The anime extends Watanuki's approach. Watanuki doesn't appear surprised in the anime to see the pipe fox emerge as in the manga. Also, the full form of the pipe fox isn't wrapped around Watanuki as in the manga. The fireball is smaller in the anime versus the manga. Also, the anime uniquely shows the full effect of the attack. Watanuki pets the pipe fox's chin. In the manga, he pets its cheek. The anime then skips a panel and changes some scene emphasis. While the sound still plays, the anime doesn't imply Watanuki's footstep broke a glass shard as in the manga. The anime also adds a unique statue head. The building interior differs between accounts and features less thick smoke at the start. The anime has Watanuki fully cover his face early instead of a bit at this point. Watanuki's line might be different, but he says it in slightly different places between accounts. The anime also adds a shot of the stairwell and changes some visuals of their descent. The anime reorders the line by Watanuki and adds a line too. When the reordered line occurs, the anime adds Watanuki stumbling and changes the way he falls. Also, the stairs keep going here in the anime after a turn, but don't in the manga, with differing railing designs to match. Watanuki's vision blurs are a little different, and the shard shape is changed slightly. Due to the changed stairwell, the anime lacks Watanuki seeing the next flight down a ways ahead. The anime uniquely extends Yuko leaving the shop and includes the twins wishing her well. Also, Yuko's outfit differs between accounts. The emphasis is changed in the anime, making the shop more mystique. Also, the buildings surrounding the lot are changed significantly between accounts, with the anime also lacking a cage structure in the back. The anime cuts Domoki's recollection of catching Watanuki during the Mayuko incident. The visual of Watanuki differs between accounts. The anime adds a line by Yuko and a shot of Domiki. The stare visuals differ between accounts. The anime lacks the detailed zoom shot of the angry pipe fox. Also, the door ahead is slightly altered with different smoke visuals. The way Watanuki opens the door differs between accounts. The anime reorders this line and us seeing Zashiki Watashi. Zashiki Watashi's kimono slightly differs between accounts. The anime adds a reaction by Watanuki and shows the Spider-Woman during this line. The manga doesn't show her. The anime changes the scene emphasis. The anime has the Spider-Woman uniquely switch which legs are crossed. The anime lacks the pipe fox's anger. The anime uniquely has Watanuki reach up to his right eye socket. Either the camera angle has changed or how she holds the eye has changed. The anime then changes how she moves about the eye for the scene instead of the differing shots of the manga. The shots will continue to differ between accounts, with the anime omitting a shot of the spider from earlier. I also just noticed the Spider-Woman's outfit is slightly different between accounts, with red accents down the length of the dress in the anime only. Along with some slight scene emphasis changes, the pipe fox here isn't right next to Watanuki as in the manga. This line might be changed. The anime adds a scene of Zashiki Watashi requesting the eye. The anime extends the sequence with Watanuki being able to dodge attacks while the pipe fox defends, thereby also adding lines by the Spider-Woman too. The manga had Watanuki captured in one strike. Also, when Watanuki is captured, his neck is grabbed too. This wasn't in the manga. The way the pipe fox attacks differs between accounts, with the attack successfully freeing Watanuki in the anime only. This visual differs slightly between accounts, and the anime adds a reaction by Zashiki Watashi. The anime adds a unique scene with Watashi at Yuko's while Yuko builds a Yamato. These last changes of the attack scene naturally change how the scene occurs, including with Watanuki getting recaptured in the anime instead of being pulled towards Spider-Woman for an up-close and personal encounter. Since she is only now bringing him up, the anime adds extra lines and movements by the Spider-Woman. This also causes her hand to be on Watanuki for this line in the anime only. These extra movements will also cause the Spider-Woman and Watanuki to be on the same side as Zashiki Watashi for the scene's duration instead of opposite sides as in the manga. The anime adds a laugh by the Spider-Woman. The anime reorders when Watanuki reacts to the Spider-Woman's line. Watanuki's lines might be changed, but it might just be a translation issue. Also, there's some camera angle / scene emphasis changes throughout. The anime adds a shot of the Spider-Woman leaning back in reaction. The anime shows her mouth instead of a black panel. The anime adds a visual reaction by Watanuki. How the Spider-Woman leans forward differs between accounts. The anime has Watanuki look straight forward during this line. In the manga, he turns around. Also, this attack sequence differs, as in the anime, the fireball goes after the Spider-Woman while also freeing Watanuki. Save for one thread, he uses a swing to Zashiki Watashi. Whereas in the manga, the attack only frees Watanuki, and he falls forward to land on Zashiki Watashi and cut her free. The anime adds a shot of Watanuki. The positioning of the eye differs slightly between accounts. The anime adds a shot of her throat instead of everything fading to black, and a side-by-side shot with Watanuki's left vision. The anime adds a gulp animation and changes the Spider-Woman's hand position afterward. The anime has the pipe fox shoot multiple fireballs. The manga just had it breathe one giant breath of fire. The visuals of her web dissolving also differ as a result. The visual of her disappearing lacks the spider thread effect in the anime, and the aftermath shots differ as well. Only one Tengu opens the door, with the others following behind. In the manga, multiple Tengu may have opened the door, or maybe the door never closed. The anime adds lines by the Tengu and extends the scene a little while keeping the pipe fox in frame. The manga didn't keep the pipe fox in frame. The anime uniquely inserts another scene at Yuko's. The ripple effects and visuals slightly differ between accounts. Aside from some emphasis changes, the anime lacks the pipe fox's whine. The anime adds a line by the Tengu and adds back in now the pipe fox's whine. The anime adds Zashiki Watashi holding Watanuki's hand and a line by her too. The way Watanuki wipes away her tears is different between accounts. Also, Yasuki Watashi opens her eyes in the anime, but this isn't seen in the manga. Apart from lacking the intro panel, Watanuki's right hand isn't still bleeding in the shot as in the manga, and he is given extra animations in the anime. Meanwhile, the anime lacks the Mokuna-themed items in the room as in the manga. The anime adds a reaction line by Watanuki. The way Yuko turns and closes the door slightly differs between accounts. The pipe fox emerges from the tub and brings Watanuki's glasses. In the manga, the pipe fox instead wrapped itself around Watanuki, who himself had on his glasses from the start. The anime adds a zoom shot of the pipe fox. Meanwhile, the blanket Maru places on it is much smaller in the anime versus the manga. The anime has Yuko close the door behind her as she walks onto the porch. The manga left the door open and had the two sitting together from the start of the scene. The angle at which the medkit is placed and Mokuna is facing differs between accounts. Also, the way Yuko holds her drink differs, and Watanuki's cup lacks steam in the anime. The anime also adds a line by Mokuna and has him close and move the kit away. Whereas in the manga, we only see the kit has been closed a bit later and then see it has been moved away even later. The anime focuses on Watanuki for this line instead of Yuko. This keeps changing, so I'll summarize. Positioning the drinks in hands keeps changing between accounts for the scene's duration. The anime focuses on Watanuki's eye. The manga focused on his reflection in the drink. The anime cuts a visual panel. The anime focuses on Watanuki instead of the eye half. The anime uniquely adds Watanuki closing his eyes. The anime lacks Mokuna in the shot and has the camera facing their fronts instead of backs. The way Watanuki grabs the eye half is slightly different between accounts. BGV. The anime only shows one eye, the manga emphasizes one but still shows both. Mokuna's positioning here is different. The anime uniquely shows Yuko petting Watanuki's head. These lines might be changed slightly, but the anime does add shots of the Watashi instead of Yuko, and changes some emphasis when returning to Yuko. Mokuna isn't present in the anime as in the manga. Watanuki is positioned differently between accounts, and Domiki doesn't tilt his head to look at the bento in the anime as in the manga. This line might be changed. The anime adds embellishments by Watanuki for the scene's duration. Episode 4 covers chapters 49 to 52. The anime uniquely adds a looming darkness growing toward an unsuspecting Watanuki. The anime slightly extends this chase sequence and shows extra camera angles with the dark cloud behind him. The manga doesn't show a dark cloud, but just Mokuna once we see the shadow. Some of the background details, including the Mokuna positions, are slightly different between accounts. The anime changed Watanuki's line as it isn't New Year's, but just another day. The anime adds extra effects to Watanuki's bliss. In line with the New Year's change, this dialogue is different. Also, the image of a hawk and eggplant has the hawk carrying the eggplant in the anime versus the two being separate in the manga. The anime then keeps these in the background and emphasizes the eggplant instead of having question marks in the background as in the manga. Another line is changed due to the date change. The anime adds a shadow effect with Himawari, which will continue as the camera pans upward. The anime then uniquely shows her dream. The anime cuts a line by Watanuki. The anime adds emphasis on the Madeleines. While Watanuki's line might be different, his embellishments certainly are. There's a changed emphasis to Watanuki's face. The anime adds a line by Watanuki. The cat is added as a background effect instead of how Himawari is reminded of such an image at Watanuki's gesture as in Chapter 52's later conversation. The chair Watanuki stands on isn't tipping over in the anime as in the manga. The anime shows a flashback instead of Watanuki shouting what Himawari said, hence some lines are slightly different or added. Watanuki's pose is slightly different. This line by Watanuki might be changed. The anime adds emphasis on the folding. The anime uniquely adds extra shots of Watanuki and his thought embellishments. Watanuki's pose differs between accounts. BGV. Another BGV. The anime adds a shot of Watanuki on the floor and changes the visualization of Himawari. Watanuki's hand gesture differs between accounts. The anime shows the street, whereas the manga just shows the power lines. Watanuki turns around in the anime but only glances over his shoulder in the manga. Hence, the shot of the road is different in the anime and may lack the looming shadow presence possibly seen in the manga. The anime also adds a shot of him turning back forward. The road he takes is slightly different between accounts as evident by the markers. The anime cuts a thought by Watanuki, possibly because that doesn't sound like footsteps. The anime extends Watanuki's walking sequence before adding a mysterious light effect envelop the area. The anime also cuts 2 thoughts by Watanuki. The anime slightly emphasizes and reorders some parts of the scene, including when the spirit slime effect reaches the ground and when Watanuki thinks his thoughts. The lines might be changed, or it is just a translation liberty. The anime uniquely shows the spirit catching Watanuki and emphasizes the caught leg. The way the spirit envelops Watanuki slightly differs between accounts. The anime has Watanuki drop the case. In the manga, either Watanuki never drops it, or he lets go of it within a finger's distance in a moment. The anime changes the camera angle for the shot, also showing the spirit looking at Haruka, and shows Watanuki further from the case than in the manga. The anime adds light effects to the arrow instead of a deeper impact to the spirit's eye. How the arrow lands differs slightly between accounts. The anime adds motion and sounds by the horse and slightly extends the scene with Watanuki struggling up and the slow reveal of Domuki. Watanuki's facial expression differs between accounts. The magazine Yuko is reading differs between accounts. The anime adds lines by Watanuki and him noticing Domuki has left as the anime emphasizes the case. The magazine manga panels differ between accounts. The way Yuko stands and points is slightly different between accounts. Also, the anime adds an aura effect to the arrow on the ground instead of a focused shot of it with smoke. We now get a closer look at the magazine difference, it being Young Magazine with a generic character in the anime versus the weekly Manga promoting musical sensation Primera in the manga. The anime uniquely emphasizes Yuko stopping her swing. The anime adds a line by Yuko. The anime adds a shot of Himawari. Also, the anime has a rock formation and slide behind them, whereas the manga has trees behind them. Watanuki's line is changed in line with the date difference. The anime changes the shot of smoke in the manga to a shot of Himawari. The way Watanuki holds the magazine and arrow differs between accounts. The flashback differences were covered earlier, same changes. So now we have the anime showing Watanuki turning toward Yuko in the anime as well. Some scene emphasis changes as well for the next lines. Also, Yuko's finger positions slightly differ between accounts. The anime uniquely adds another flashback instead of the shot of Haruka. Some more scene emphasis is also changed. Yuko begins swinging again in the anime only. The anime uniquely has Yuko jump off the swing. In the manga, she stays seated for a while. The anime adds an utterance by Watanuki. The anime cut 2 pages of dialogue. As such, when saying this line, it might be slightly cut or changed, and the anime doesn't emphasize the arrow. Yuko's pose is different between accounts. Watanuki is behind Yuko in the anime versus passing her as she stops in the manga. Also, Watanuki is still holding the magazine in the anime to set up for a joke in a minute, whereas the manga had him stuff it in his bag before they left the park. This also results in a different camera angles for discussing the arrow, including showing the arrow leaving his hand with the magazine in it rather than the hand with the bag in it. The arrow's spinning effect is also extended in the anime. The positions the two are standing in are swapped in the anime versus the manga, and the poles and walls designs are slightly different. In fact, the greatest street design is slightly different regarding fencing and buildings. The anime adds an utterance by Watanuki and a question mark over his head. The anime adds another utterance by Watanuki. Watanuki is pointing in the anime versus aiming an open palm at the arrow in the manga. Next, the anime changes the camera angles and adds Yuko pointing to the gap. The anime slightly changes how Watanuki measures the gap and omits a line. The way Watanuki points is different between accounts, and the anime adds Watanuki's reaction to Yuko going through the gap. Additionally, the anime extends Watanuki's reluctance to go through the gap and adds the arrow wiggling to say, "this way." Furthermore, the anime seems to lack that the arrow is floating above Watanuki's hand most of the time in the manga, and instead has it free-floating in the anime. The anime also adds Watanuki getting stuck and forcing himself forward into ikai. The camera angles continue to change, and the arrow still isn't above his hand in the anime. Camera angle change in BGV. The anime has the arrow descend and fall into Watanuki's hands, whereas it remained hovering over his hand in the manga. This, combined with the magazine change earlier, will persist throughout the scene. The anime lacks the halo around the dream buyer and adds Watanuki squinting to see the buyer. The anime then zooms in on the buyer before Watanuki's shock. In the manga, the shock came first. The anime also adds Watanuki pointing. The anime shows Yuko waving instead of focusing on the dream buyer for these lines. The anime might also add a line by Yuko. The anime adds a line by Watanuki and extends the scene of the buyer's descent. The buyer closes his eyes for this greeting in the anime, but not in the manga. The anime changes the camera angle and doesn't have the buyer turn his head, instead having him cross his arms. The anime adds a zoom in on the arrow and a first-person shot as the buyer approaches Watanuki. The anime then adds the utterance by Watanuki, as the anime uniquely has Watanuki hand over the magazine for a pervert gag, rather than just the buyer wanting the arrow dream immediately. Hence, the focus on the arrow is also different between accounts. The camera angles are different throughout this exchange, and the anime omits Yuko's line before showing a zoomed-in shot of the buyer, even more zoomed in than the manga. The anime uniquely zooms in on the arrow. The anime doesn't have Watanuki holding his hand out in objection, as in the manga, and cuts a couple lines. The anime has the buyer let go of the other dreams as they float to the side, as he exaggerates his motions. The manga has him holding them in his left paw, I guess you could call it, with no exaggerations. The anime shifts the camera to show the buyer's emotions instead of Watanuki's confusion. The anime also changes Watanuki's lines before Yuko speaks. Just notice Yuko doesn't have gloves on in the anime as in the manga. Also, the anime changes Watanuki's line. The anime extends Yuko's selection of dreams and changes the camera focus. The anime doesn't have the buyer's hat jump in surprise. The anime zooms on Yuko one line earlier than the manga. The way Watanuki holds the arrow differs between accounts. The anime adds an utterance by Watanuki. The buyer might call Yuko something different between accounts. Also, Yuko's line might be changed, but for sure her pose is different between accounts. The anime slightly adds more effects to the arrow going into the balloon. BGV and the anime adds Yuko and Watanuki to the shot. The anime cuts lines by Watanuki, and the buyer's first line may be addressing a different prior line now with that cut. More camera angle changes between accounts throughout the scene, especially here as the anime emphasizes Watanuki instead of the two. The anime adds Watanuki's bag on the ground. The anime has the buyer blink once. The manga had him blink twice, and more camera angle shifts persist in the scene. The anime adds an utterance by Watanuki. The buyer says this on the ground in the anime, but while taking off in the manga. Also, the buyer ties the balloon for the fox boy in with the others, rather than keeping it separated in his other, paw, I guess. This will persist as he floats away. The anime adds Yuko waving. The anime omits Watanuki from the shot. Where Watanuki and Yuko are standing differs between accounts. The anime cuts Yuko's laughter, and as was seen earlier, she now holds the magazine, which was in the bag the whole time in the manga. Since their positions were edited, so is Watanuki's pointing pose. Last note on the magazine is Yuko points with it in the anime, versus just her finger in the manga. Also, Watanuki's hand gesture is unique to the anime. Camera angle changes, and I'm just going to call it CIC from now on, throughout the scene. The anime cuts a line by Watanuki. Also, the way Watanuki places his glasses down differs between accounts. The anime adds Watanuki's eyes opening a bit before his surprise. Also, the doors differ between accounts. CIC in the anime cuts a line by Watanuki and has Haruka turn around before Watanuki realizes it isn't Shizuka. In the manga, Watanuki could tell it wasn't Shizuka before Haruka turned around. BGV in the anime reorders zoom on Haruka. The anime cuts a line by Watanuki. The way Watanuki points out his eye slightly differs between accounts. CAC. Watanuki isn't covering his eye in the anime as in the manga. The anime adds a zoom and chuckle by Haruka. The position Watanuki wakes up in slightly differs between accounts, as again does his glasses. Also, his glances are while lying down in the anime, but after he sat up in the manga. The anime omits Yuko placing her hand on the door, also CACs throughout the scene. The anime adds extra emphasis to the moon out the window, also where Watanuki is in the room differs between accounts. The anime lacks the showing of the photo panel from the manga. The photo slightly differs between accounts, showing more in the anime and that Shizuka is in a slightly different pose, and the kimono has a slightly different design. The anime changes Yuko's line to say the photo was probably of Shizuka, and then the anime cuts her explanation of the clothing custom before uniquely having Watanuki say he knew it was Shizuka, before looking for the photo as in the manga. The manga instead has Watanuki come to the realization that the photo was of Shizuka due to Yuko's explanation of the custom. The anime adds an extra creepy face of Watanuki as he searches. The anime uniquely adds Yuko placing Watanuki's chin on her finger, also CAC and BGV. Yuko's pose differs between accounts and more CACs. Watanuki's pose is different while saying these lines. This pose was taken from a few pages later as Watanuki talks to Domiki. The anime cuts the ending to this conversation and instead adds in Mokuna arriving with eggplants. This Mokuna scene in the manga instead occurred while Watanuki talked with Domiki the next day, hence more CACs and line changes/additions. Watanuki's position is slightly different on the ground, and Mokuna's position is edited as he also turns purple. Episode 5 covers chapters 47 and 51 through 53. The anime uniquely extends Domiki leaving his house rather than showing the sky view panel in the manga. The anime adds an utterance by Domiki and then omits Watanuki's hand gesture during the laugh. The conversation is also altered, added, reordered, changed. And Watanuki is given more hand gestures. As a follow-up to last episode's change, Domiki explains the clothing custom to Watanuki here rather than Yuko explaining it the night before. As such, the dialogue is changed. The anime omits Domiki muting his ear for this line. The anime moves the school sign with CAC to the start of the sequence rather than the end, and adds a shot of the trees rather than the petals falling. The anime adds a zoom on the food. The anime changes the conversation from the cherry trees to a unique conversation about Domiki's youth, although some shots are visually the same. While this conversation is unique to the anime, it does give more lore about Domiki's family that may be canon. The anime uniquely adds foreshadowing for Himura's backstory and its exclusive flashback shot to her youth. The anime adds a unique flashback scene of Watanuki and Yuko at the shop as they discuss Himura. The anime now returns to the manga conversation but with CACs. Also, Himura is sitting in the middle in the anime versus across from Watanuki in the manga. The anime adds a line by Watanuki. The background waves are vertical in the anime instead of horizontal as in the manga. Also, Watanuki is given extra reactions in the anime. Since Watanuki saw the show earlier in the anime, Watanuki's line is changed. BGV. The anime uniquely zooms on Himura. Also, her hands are open in the anime versus closed and holding a fork in the manga. Due to the prior scene change, Himura has a dessert in her hand for this shot that isn't present in the manga. The anime doesn't show Domiki eating, though you can hear him, until Watanuki's reaction. Also, the gestures are changed, as is the camera angle. Additionally, Himura doesn't think of an angry cat, as the anime used that image earlier this season. The anime adds a shot of the two before zooming on Watanuki, but with a CIC. The anime actually shows us the two have begun walking up the stairs. The manga only implies they climbed stairs after the fact, but they also may have just walked on the same level path as the tree rather than from the stairs to the side. But anyway, the lines reordered to occur on the stairs rather than before they reach the stairs. CAC in Watanuki says the standing still in the anime versus walking toward the tree in the manga. Additionally, Himawari's line is said as Kohane comes on screen rather than before Watanuki notices Kohane. CAC and BGV. The anime adds a zoom on the mother, Satoe. More CACs throughout the scene. The anime cuts a line by Satoe. The anime reorders Watanuki's lines and adds a line by Kohane. The anime cuts Watanuki noticing Kohane reaching out to Satoe. Kohane's hand position is different between accounts. The anime adds Watanuki's shock. The anime closes Satoe's eyes earlier than the manga does. In addition to more CACs, the anime adds a shot of petals around Kohane's hair. The anime adds a wind effect with petals around Kohane's hair. CACs. The anime has the family walk down the stairs. The manga had them walk down the level path to the side. The anime also omits Himawari and Watanuki from the shot before uniquely panning back to Watanuki in the tree. CAC. The anime extends Yuko's pipe shot. The anime lacks Mokuna standing on the side table as in the manga. The anime adds an extra shot of Yuko smoking. The anime lacks the smoke in front of Watanuki for this shot. The anime zooms in further here than the manga. The anime adds a zoom of the table, showing its contents are slightly different from the manga's. CAC. The anime then adds a unique extension to the conversation as Yuko smokes and says Kohane's power is genuine rather than the which meaning lines. Upon returning to the script for a line or two, more CACs. Then Yuko addresses Watanuki for a line that may be slightly changed from what she tells Mokuna privately afterward. This change also omits the twins appearing and Watanuki going inside. CAC. Domaki is reading a book in the anime, but in the manga, his hands are empty. Also, while I normally don't cover mirrored sequences, Watanuki holding the bento in his left hand means he did not have to turn to place it between them in the anime as in the manga. Also, the anime added zoom emphasis to the bento. The anime cuts lines by Watanuki. The anime uniquely zooms on the bento. The anime uniquely shows Watanuki eating egg. CAC. The anime slightly extends the scene with a line by Watanuki and zoom emphasis before blending a scene from chapter 47 into the conversation. In that scene, Domaki remarked he saw the Raiju events with the eye connection, but the anime won't cover the Raiju events until the end of the season. Due to the blended conversation, several lines are changed, cut, or reordered, and this also includes visual reactions to lines, as well as a shot of Kohane being reordered to the end. BGV. The blended conversation is still altered as previously stated, but it is worth pointing out Watanuki is more perplexed by how the eye connection works in the anime versus thinking of possible reasons for how it works in the manga. The anime cuts the conversation early as Yuko already confirmed Kohane's powers are real. Meanwhile, the manga had an extra line where Domaki believed Kohane's powers were real, for Yuko hadn't confirmed anything yet. The anime adds a unique shot of the street instead of the school exterior. Additionally, Watanuki walks down a slightly different street between accounts and climbs the stairs in the anime only. Also, his lines are cut in the anime. The anime reorders showing Kohane to before Watanuki's reaction and cuts his thought. CIC in the anime adds a wide shot. The anime adds a shot of Kohane turning. Several more CACs throughout the scene. The CIC is noteworthy as it emphasizes the spiritual power she has that may not be as apparent in the manga. This segment is also slightly extended. The anime returns focus to the ghost earlier than the manga's account. Also, the ghost is shown in more detail, which doesn't happen for a few more pages than the manga. Just another example of the CICs throughout this scene. There are so many. The CIC is noteworthy for focusing on the petals rather than Watanuki. The anime adds an extended shot of Domaki's house and the two walking up to it. The anime adds a shot of Kohane's shoes. The anime keeps the two partially in frame for the shot. More CACs throughout the scene. The anime adds a shot of the two looking up at a tree. The anime slightly extends the ghost floating to the tree sequence. More CACs, including the anime lacking a zoom on Watanuki's face. This CAC is noteworthy as Kohane isn't shown to reach out with both hands for the umbrella in the anime as in the manga. The anime might give Watanuki an extra line. The anime adds a zoom on Kohane's face and then more CACs. The anime changes the shot from Kohane in the manga to the flowers in the anime. CAC. The anime slightly extends Kohane's departure. Also, Domeki appears on screen in the anime before he says his line, whereas in the manga he appeared after his line. The anime shows Watanuki inside, whereas the manga showed the rain through the doorway. The anime also then uniquely zooms on Watanuki and slightly extends Domeki's entrance, but with a zoom shot of his feet. Domeki says this while handing Watanuki the drink in the anime, versus when entering the room in the manga. Hence, Watanuki doesn't turn his head in the anime to face Domeki as in the manga. This also changes a couple more panels in the adaptation. More CACs. The anime adds a shot of Watanuki turning to face the ghost, whereas the manga just shows the ghost somehow. Maybe she is in the room if Domeki is seeing her through the eye? The anime adds an utterance by Domeki and a line by Watanuki. The anime cuts a couple lines by Watanuki. The two are sitting across from each other in the anime but 90 degrees from each other in the manga. Additionally, the location of the tray and position of the cups is different between accounts, with a lack of steam in the anime. The anime also cuts a panel emphasizing Domeki listening to Watanuki. The anime adds a unique shot of the exterior. More CACs. The anime uniquely shows a withering plant outside the house. This CAC reorders the emphasis of Kohane and Satoe in the scene. Kohane keeps looking up at her mother in the anime, but looks down in the manga. CAC shows us different parts of the foyer between accounts. The anime lacks the umbrella emphasis, and has Satoe turn around completely as Kohane walks in the house. The manga had Satoe only turn slightly upon hearing Kohane say the two aren't together. The anime then adds a CAC showing more of the house. The anime has Kohane think these lines, but the manga used the speech bubbles for spoken words, meaning her mother was likely supposed to hear these lines. The interior of the house differs between accounts. The anime omits showing Satoe turning to the phone, and has the phone in the dining room rather than the entry hall. Other details of the house differ as well from this change, including how Kohane came to the room to hear the call instead of just turning back to listen. The food on the table slightly differs between accounts, and the anime uniquely shows Kohane's reaction to the table. The anime emphasizes Satoe's mouth/words more than the manga does. The anime uniquely shows Kohane leave the area during these lines, whereas the manga focuses on her a little later into the phone call. The hoarder stuff Satoe bought off Kohane's success is slightly different between accounts. Also, the manga doesn't show this room until one panel later. Additionally, the house layout behind Kohane differs between accounts. The anime has Kohane walk up the middle of the stairs with both hands holding the umbrella. The manga instead had her walking up the rail side of the stairs, holding the rail with one hand and the umbrella with the other. Additional CACs are present, showing the trail of water leading through the house in the manga only. After Kohane closed the door, she still holds the umbrella with both hands in the anime. In the manga, she had one hand against the shut door, and the other hand held the umbrella. She then clasps the umbrella with both hands in the manga. Meanwhile, the anime has her approach the bed first, and so extends the scene, including an extra line. The anime adds a unique scene of Watanuki at the temple. Episode 6 covers Chapter 55. The episode uniquely opens on a drink reflection instead of the characters themselves, and adds or changes dialogue by Yuko, Mokona, and Watanuki. Two panels are also in essence swapped in this intro for dialogue and visuals as we see more Watanuki antics in the anime. While there are visual changes to the environment, for example the temple archway and doors, most noteworthy is Watanuki sitting in front of the temple this whole episode, while Domeki is to Watanuki's left, whereas in the manga, the two's positions are swapped. Also in the anime, the mahjong table has the tiles scattered, whereas the manga had yet to open the storage box for the tiles. CACs throughout the scene, and Watanuki is given more lines and antics during Yuko's lines. Meanwhile, due to the last change, Domeki isn't opening the mahjong box here as in the manga. The anime has Yuko looking at the ghost in the tree, whereas Watanuki did so in the manga. Also, how the ghost appears into the shot differs between accounts, and more CACs are present. The anime extends the shuffling scene, and when Mokona chimes in, the anime adds Mokona rolling around to shuffle them. The anime adds Domeki looking at Watanuki. The anime has the ghost move from the tree, but doesn't show her moving right behind Watanuki as in the manga. Hence, his reaction is cut, and the dialogue is changed to have the mahjong game ready to play, but some of the cut dialogue will be shown later in the episode. CAC in the anime adds round marker panels before each round. The anime changes the visuals of how the winning hand is displayed throughout the episode, with the pieces floating in midair, so I'll summarize that overall. Also, Mokina jumps in front of the pieces for this visual in the anime versus saying this line to the side in the next manga panel. Also, the winning hand is notably different between accounts. Other CACs will persist in the continued scene. The anime cuts an utterance by Watanuki and adds visuals for the mahjong figures mentioned in silhouette form. The anime also lacks the drinks swishing. The episode also uniquely adds scoreboard animations for the games throughout the episode, so that will be summarized here. The anime cuts Mokina singing. As with the other visual overlays that are changed, this one is more noteworthy for being a BGV. In addition to more CACs, Watanuki's line is changed to a confusion utterance. Watanuki has 4 blocks on his head in the anime but 5 in the manga. Also, Mokina's line might be slightly extended in the anime. This begins the anime-exclusive portion of the episode, which will persist for most of the episode. The manga moved to Watanuki saying he didn't know how to play, but all that has happened so far being enough for the ghost to move on. When Watanuki does say this line in the anime shows the environment rather than Watanuki. So, back to the unique additions, they include the following. Mokina spawns a bunch of tutorial books for Watanuki and the jokes that follow. The possible advertisement of the Mahjong guidebook. Continued gameplay as Watanuki watches the 3 and an actual tutorial for the audience. Continued gameplay as Watanuki tries to make a specific hand, and his continued failure, not knowing how close he was to an amazing hand. A Miku reference, the arrival of Himuroi, this interaction being another example of avoiding Himuroi's bad luck. Watanuki's obliteration by the 3, Mokina's cuteness, Watanuki's failure, the Watashi arriving, the malicious miasma, and Watanuki's win and loss. The anime now partially covers the skipped dialogue from before, which explains that the sound of shuffling tiles is a farewell gift to the departed. While back to the script here, the anime uniquely includes a scorecard and Watanuki's crying loss amid verbatim dialogue by Yuko. Meanwhile, Watanuki's lines are changed and additional lines are added by others, especially by Yuko, before ordering Watanuki to pay with clothes. BGV and foreground visual change. The anime now covers the ghost reaching out to Watanuki for farewell and adds an utterance and line by Watanuki as the scene is extended with shots of the others. Other lines are cut, and the anime adds Watanuki catching a paddle. The anime then covers a previously cut line by Mokina, although the anime still cuts Watanuki's asking if Mokina can see the ghost, and covers the cut explanation of the ritual from earlier, but with obvious visual differences, since the game is over and some other lines are changed slightly. The anime then adds Watanuki looking at Domiki as the anime blends in another of Yuko's lines from the manga, as the anime stays on script but with more CACs. The anime adds a line by Watanuki while cutting Yuko's "It's Joke" line about the strip game. Additional lines by Yuko and Watanuki are added before getting back on script with more CACs. Mokina is given an extra line. A line by Watanuki is cut along with a line by Mokina and another by Watanuki. Domiki isn't holding a cup in his hand in the anime as in the manga. Since the Watashi are here, Zashiki Watashi decides to help in the anime only, and Ama Watashi also accompanies them. Meanwhile, Mokina joins Watanuki in both accounts, but the anime cuts a line by Watanuki and has Mokina jump on Watanuki's head, which isn't seen in the manga until later. More CACs and this scene is extended slightly. The anime cuts Watanuki's argument with Domiki in the background. Yuka's line might be slightly changed, but I more so wanted to point out the scene likely has a double meaning, as she possibly remembers Chloe Reed and not just a ghost, especially since this anime skipped the previous chapter where Tsubasa Lee arrived at the shop, but this will be covered in the Tokyo Revelations OVAs. Episode 7 covers chapters 56 through 57. The anime adds extra emphasis to Yuko and either changes or adds a line for her. Normally this isn't something one can tell, but Moro's swimsuit is red in the anime but white in the colored page of the manga. Additional small changes also appear, for example Maru's eyes being closed instead of open for this shot, and this shot occurring before Watanuki's lines instead of after as in the manga. Also, the twins are given extra lines in the anime. Watanuki's lines are changed and the twins echo the shower from the pool instead of by Yuko's side. Mokuna is given an extra line, and then his water gun is changed as the twins are given more lines. Watanuki's line might also be changed to utterances in the anime. The cat girl has a hat on in the anime, but not in the manga. When Yuko gets up, she doesn't begin covering herself with a towel as in the manga. Also, a line by Mokuna is cut, as well as a line by the cat girl. The cutting of her line may also slightly change the twins' lines and reasons for showering her. The anime shows the cat girl stomp on Watanuki as she runs away. The manga shows her jump off, but isn't clear as she stomps on his back here. Additionally, the cat girl runs around the yard to the porch, whereas in the manga she jumps straight onto Yuko. Yuko is shown to have sat back down in the pool, whereas in the manga she never did so. The anime cuts lines by the twins. The anime lacks a wind effect here. Yuko now covers herself with a towel. This was done earlier in the manga with the twins' assistance. Yuko then is given a unique line in the anime, cutting Watanuki getting a towel and his and Mokuna's lines. Okay, a lot to unpack here, as this is a huge change to separate the anime from the Tsubasa anime. In the anime here, we see the cat girl offer an egg to Yuko as payment for if she'll help get water out of this nearby well. We will later see this is because a cat died in the well, and the cat girl wants to remove the body for a proper burial. However, in the manga, Yuko is in need of pure, ancient water to send to the Tsubasa group in post-apocalyptic Tokyo. So since the cat girl is getting too hot in summer, Yuko immediately places a hat on the cat girl, the hat which we see her have already somehow in the anime, which magically cools the wearer. The cat girl wonders what Yuko wants in exchange for it, to which Yuko, noting how cats have more knowledge of areas due to exploration than humans do, desires information as to the whereabouts of such water. Hence, the cat girl will lead Watanuki to the water, and after a later interaction back at the shop, will effectively bounce and not return, since there is no dead cat in the well. With all that in mind, I only need to summarize this anime scene is drastically changed, especially regarding dialogue. Regarding similarities, the end plays out the same, but the anime cuts a line by the cat girl. Meanwhile, Mokuna jumps up rather than is already on Watanuki's head here. The anime cuts a sky shot and a line by Watanuki while having a CIC. Some lines are also changed due to the aforementioned story change. The anime cuts lines by the two. After two verbatim lines, the anime changes and cuts some lines. The anime adds a line by Watanuki. The anime slightly extends the viewing of the woman. The anime omits a breeze blowing the curtains and hair. Also, Watanuki's line might be changed. The anime shows Watanuki bend down to unwrap the jug. The manga had him walk closer to the well and then open it off screen. The anime also lacks the zoom on the jug. BGV. The anime cuts two panels of the window. The anime cuts lines by Yuko and the cat girl due to the story change, also CACs. One of Watanuki's lines might also be cut. Yuko is given an extra line and Mokuna isn't next to the jug in the anime. This conversation is overall altered, cut, changed, added, reordered, in line with the story change. One change of note is Yuko being vague about how many times she'll need him to go back to the well in the anime versus specifying 12 more jugs in the manga. A line by Watanuki is cut. Meanwhile, Mokuna and the cat girl aren't fooling around in the anime as in the manga. The glass differs between accounts and the scene contains more CICs. A line by Watanuki is cut. Also, the twins speak while appearing in the anime versus just before appearing in the manga. Lines by Yuko and Watanuki are cut. Psi effects are omitted in the anime. Watanuki's demeanor is slightly different during this line, and a line by Yuko is cut. Also, the cat girl's line might be the one from the previous page instead of the current one in the manga. Watanuki is then given an extra line. This conversation with Mokuna is drastically changed, with Watanuki initially happy Mokuna will go, but then realizing Mokuna will just tag along and do nothing. Meanwhile, the manga has Mokuna show he can carry large and heavy objects, but Watanuki objecting to the assistance, so as not to be questioned by people over the existence of such a creature. Other reactions are cut as a result. Watanuki's lines about Himawari might be slightly changed, and the anime doesn't have the thought bubble about her or Watanuki's gestures, since Mokuna isn't carrying the jugs right now. All the extras don't tackle Watanuki in the scene before Yuko mentions Domuki. Hence, the camera focuses on Yuko in the anime versus the cat pile in the anime. BGV. Since the cat girl wants to rescue the body, she keeps accompanying the duo in the anime. Meanwhile, in the manga, she's long gone as her part of the bargain was over. Also, the street is different between accounts. The cat girl staying in the anime also adds more dialogue. How the two hop the wall differs between accounts, especially since in the anime, Watanuki goes over first and has to catch the jugs Domaki throws. Meanwhile, the manga had each person carry one jug while climbing over. CACs, but the main change is Watanuki is just scared to see the woman again, and then Domaki leans down alongside Watanuki. Meanwhile, the manga had Watanuki shout to Domaki before pulling him to duck down too. The anime then cuts some lines before adding more CACs. Some panels are cut to shorten the sequence slightly. The anime adds a shot of the wind blowing, and the anime has these lines spoken while unwrapping the jug and grabbing the grate. The manga had it said before unwrapping the jug. The anime then vastly extends the scene by showing the two opening the grate, collecting the water, and Watanuki possibly sensing the dead cat in the well. Meanwhile, the manga cut to the next day at school after another line and glance at the woman by Domaki. The anime still does include Domaki looking at the woman, albeit slightly differently between accounts. So another unique addition in the anime is that there's a strange sound in the well as the duo leave. The anime has the characters appear on screen for this line. The manga had it set a panel earlier. Watanuki is given an extra line, and the anime might have changed his next line slightly. CACs throughout the scene. Watanuki might be given an extra line. CAC as the focus is on Watanuki instead of Domaki. BGV. Domaki is given an extra line. Watanuki and Himawari's positions differ between accounts. After a BGV, the anime omits a final glance by Watanuki during the scene. Yuko's line is changed, and the conversation is changed too to match the anime story. Also, Yuko's outfit is drastically different between accounts, and Mokona isn't present here as in the manga. The anime does get back on track to the script, but with a slightly different line here, and BGV. The anime adds a spin effect to Yuko. Watanuki's lines might be reordered, but nonetheless, he says them while hopping on the porch rather than while standing as in the manga. This affects when he says his next line as well. The anime cuts a line by Watanuki. The anime cuts to the school. The manga instead showed the third, fourth, and fifth trips briefly first. Similar to previous episodes, the classroom desks and cubbies differ between accounts. CACs. The anime cuts the line by Himawari as in the anime. They don't know if it'll be a last trip or not yet. Watanuki is given an extra line. A line by Watanuki is cut. The anime uniquely zooms on the finger here, and Watanuki is given an extra utterance. BGV. When the background shifts to black, the aura emanates from the fingers rather than floats in the background as in the manga. The anime cuts a line by Watanuki. The anime slightly extends Himawari's departure and adds a line by her. The anime adds a howl and a Shrek moon while lacking the trees. The conversation is altered, changed, added, due to the anime story in the presence of the cat girl. When the lines do overlap, the anime has this said while drawing the water rather than while climbing the wall in the manga. Additional portions of the entrance and water drawing are cut while others are added, such as Watanuki's lines and getting the water in general. Specifically on those lines, several are added due to the changed story. The wind is emphasized in the floor in the anime versus throughout the background of the entire scene in the manga. Also, the anime uniquely adds an aura around Watanuki's pinky, also more CACs. The anime adds Watanuki checking his hand. The duo's positioning is slightly different between accounts, as is his depiction of the house's architecture. Watanuki's lines might be slightly reordered, meanwhile the emphasis on the leaves is extended in the anime versus showing the duo more in the manga. Hence, when Domaki says his line in the anime, the emphasis is on the woman, not the leaves as in the manga. Watanuki tries the doorbell thrice in the anime, but only twice in the manga. BGVs. Watanuki's line might be changed. Also, the door's design differs between accounts, and the way Watanuki opens the door slightly differs between accounts, also BGV. The interior of the house differs slightly between accounts, and the anime adds zoom shots. Also, the anime shows alternate angles of the duo entering and cuts and adds lines. In fact, the way the two act is quite different. In the anime, Domaki suggests they go in, to which Watanuki fearfully agrees. Hence, Domaki leads the way. But in the manga, Watanuki starts to enter first, after Domaki suggests heading to the second floor, to which Domaki is surprised by Watanuki suddenly entering the house. In line with the story change, the anime adds another scene of the cat girl. The anime has the duo explore the house for quite a while and so adapts this one line differently. Meanwhile, the manga had any conversation of the two at the entrance before they immediately head straight to the woman's room. Of note is Domiki in the anime saying there are no stairs, and so the duo have to find the stairs, but the manga had the stairs in the foyer in plain sight. When the duo do climb the stairs, Domiki leads the way in the anime versus Watanuki leading the way in the manga. This change also had Watanuki looking around on the way up in the anime only. The anime then extends the walk to the room and gives Domiki an extra line. When the door opens, one can see more of the room in the anime than the manga, in part because the door opened further, with the knob out of frame. Also, additional detail was added in the anime as one can see outside the window, whereas the manga just had a white background. The anime nonetheless omits the woman's hair blowing in the breeze that the manga showed, despite the fact that the breeze blows the curtains. Additionally, when the anime shows the cloth on the floor, the anime omits the leaves in the room that the manga showed, but the anime does add realistic shadows to the chair shot, and the anime scene will continue to feature CACs that show more of the room than the manga. The anime omits a line by Watanuki. Watanuki is given an extra line. Also, the anime has the huge gust of wind blow the body over before the rest of the conversation. The manga didn't have the wind blow in until after Domiki explains how the corpse hasn't degraded yet. Yuko arrives on site, causing several more massive changes to the scene, including Yuko prompting Domiki to explain there's a corpse in the room rather than him chiming in himself before they even see the corpse's face. Several other lines are cut, changed, or blended in the scene. Also, her outfit is inspired from the one several pages earlier, but one can see some slight design changes. Additional lines by Watanuki are changed or added, and there are several more CACs. A line by Domiki here may also be changed, and Watanuki's line is reordered to after Yuko's lines. Yuko chimes in the anime, speaking lines said in the manga's next scene. In the manga, Watanuki had to relay to Yuko back at the shop that Domiki had called the police. Watanuki and Yuko then had a private conversation about the dead. The conversation is extended in the anime as we see the cat girl rescuing the cat corpse and an explanation for the woman sitting at the window. Upon cutting to the shop, Yuko is drinking in the anime instead of smoking as in the manga for the scene. Additional lines are added to start the conversation with the explanation that the water should not circulate until the kitten is laid to rest. Again, in the manga, there was no dead kitten and the water was needed for the Tsubasa group. In possible changed lines, the anime starts to get back on script, but with cut and reordered lines by the two. The anime also had Yuko call the cops rather than Domiki. After some more edited and cut lines that follow the anime story, the anime follows the script again, but with additional mannerism and camera angle changes in part due to Yuko not smoking. Yuko is given an extra line, and Watanuki is given an extra utterance. The anime lacks a light emphasis on his pinky that the manga had. Again, the aura effect is different between accounts. Watanuki is given extra lines. The anime uniquely has Mokina appear, interrupting the conversation and leading Watanuki away before the cat girl arrives and privately talks to Yuko. This conversation also showing again the egg difference in accounts. The anime then has another scene with Watanuki and Mokina as the cat girl notices the finger aura. Meanwhile, the manga's conversation wasn't interrupted, and Yuko reiterated what happened in an attempt to make Watanuki realize there was a problem with being connected with Himawari. Episode 8 covers chapters 58 and 65 through 66. The episode uniquely opens on Domiki walking through the shopping district. After that out-of-the-blue opening, the anime adds another unique scene of fish cooking at Yuko's. In the manga, a bunch of events happened prior. The near-death of Watanuki, the meeting of Haruka in dreams, the duplicated egg as payment, and the hatching of the egg. Hence, this scene in the anime features a much different opening with Yuko on a computer instead of giving an egg to Domiki and Watanuki in the storehouse getting liquor and other food for Yuko. Also, Yuko's outfit, although mostly accurate to the mangas, is light instead of dark. The anime continues its unique scenes with the customer, Kayano, approaching the shop from the street. The manga only showed her after entering the grounds. While funny, the ASCII art isn't in the manga. The anime adds a line by Kayano before a potentially changed line by Yuko. And now begins another massive change set to unpack. Portions of the scene are altered, changed, cut, as Watanuki notices her uniform here instead of as Yuko talks privately with Kayano while Watanuki watches from the room over. Further, Domiki is still at the shop in the manga, finally able to enter after the near-death experience of Watanuki, and so Watanuki remarks the uniform comment to him instead of thinking it to himself. Other details overall are changed too, such as Mokona on Yuko's shoulder in the anime versus on Watanuki's shoulder in the manga. Other specific changes here include Kayuno's line being slightly changed and then having a line cut. The anime uniquely emphasizes the incense. In the manga, there was no incense, and any smoke that appeared later was just a hint that Kayuno isn't a normal human. The anime reorders a line by Yuko and a line by Kayuno. BGV, also Yuko's hand, isn't up as in the manga. BGV and the anime cuts a line by Watanuki and a line by Yuko and cuts the smoke effect around Kayuno, also CACs. The anime focuses on Watanuki here instead of Kayuno. BGV. The anime cuts lines by Yuko and Kayuno throughout the next part of this conversation. Also, the room pattern is different between accounts. Yuko's pose is different between accounts, also BGV. Kayuno is given an extra line which leads into a CAC. BGV. Kayuno is given an extra utterance and Watanuki's thought has been changed to an utterance. Since the anime hasn't covered Tampopo yet, he is absent from the scene. Also, Himura's hair hasn't changed style yet since that occurs in the Tampopo episode. Additionally, this conversation is just between Watanuki and Himura in a hallway in the anime versus between the trio at lunch on the grounds. Hence, many visual changes are present. The anime cuts a line by Watanuki. Since Domiki wasn't present in the shop during the exchange in the anime, he's given an extra line here, and Watanuki is also given an extra line. Due to location and story changes, Watanuki's reaction differs. Also, a line by Domiki is reordered. When the anime does cover the thermos, Watanuki is given extra lines. The anime extends this conversation instead of showing Watanuki speaking only one more line. Since this episode occurs before the near-death experience, the pinky finger is still affected by Himura's bad luck here. This isn't the case in the manga since the events occurred afterward and were likely neutralized by Yuko. The street visual differs between accounts. Watanuki is holding a plastic bag by his side in the anime versus a paper bag against his chest in the manga. One of Watanuki's lines is cut. The anime actually shows Kayuno open the door, the manga doesn't. Kayuno is given an extra line. Kayuno turns all the way around to talk to Watanuki, who is still in the doorway in the anime, versus turning only partially as Watanuki walks up to her side in the manga. The anime also adds the two turning to see Yuko, whose pose differs between accounts and who is given an extra line. BGV. Kayuno is given an extra line, and the anime cuts Watanuki's looks of concern before CAC. BGVs. The two were given audible utterances in the anime. An utterance by Watanuki is cut, and Kayuno is given an extra line. Also, her next lines might be changed slightly. Yuko might be given an extra line. BGV. The anime adds a shot of Kayuno turning to Watanuki, and Yuko's response is reordered to before Kayuno accepts the bells instead of after as in the manga. Yuko's line is changed. When Kayuno inspects the bells, two are in one hand and one is in the other. In the manga, all three were in the same hand. The anime adds an exterior shot of the school. Watanuki's line might be slightly changed, also CACs. The anime adds an utterance by Himura and uniquely shows the track outside. Watanuki is given an extra line, and the visual of the girls is different between accounts. Since Tampopo isn't here yet, the anime doesn't include him. The anime cuts Watanuki's laugh and adds his elation at Himura. Himura is given an extra line and has her take a few steps before Watanuki's next line. BGV. The anime changes Watanuki's lines here. Due to these changes, Domiki's line and introduction is also changed slightly. Watanuki's response is also changed, and the rest of the conversation is cut since it has to do with Watanuki rekindling his relationship with Himura after the bad luck near-death experience that the anime hasn't covered yet. Essentially, she often made up errands, but Domiki convinces her to come with them to the Kanmiya. I covered it before, but I'll say it again. The fence posts are connected to the fence in the anime, but not the manga. Also, Watanuki's line might be slightly changed. The bag design is different between accounts, and Watanuki's lines are changed since he only went with Domiki to the Kanmiya in the anime. The twins grab the bag and do their thing in the anime, whereas in the manga, by this time, all their energy needed to be funneled into preserving the shop, so they were asleep in another room. This and other factors drastically changed the scene and its dialogue. Mokona is holding a cup in the anime, but not in the manga, and more lines are changed. Then tons of petals are cut due to the twins change, and the anime cuts to Kayano approaching the shop, for which the anime uniquely adds her running in the street. Yuko is given an extra line, whereas in the manga, Watanuki had already brought the food and drinks. Kayano is given an extra line, and the anime includes an extra entrance shot. Watanuki is then given an extra line and doesn't approach with a tray of food as in the manga. The scene then contains CACs and BGV, as Watanuki is given an extra line. Kayano says this while standing in place. In the manga, she did so while approaching Watanuki. Kayano's line might be changed from arm in the manga to shoulder in the anime, and there might be a similar change with Yuko's line. Meanwhile, Yuko is in frame here in the anime versus the manga. The anime cuts a line by Watanuki, and Kayano says this without rudely stepping into the house. In the manga, she rudely stepped into the house and then said the line, but this will be covered later in the episode. Yuko holds up 3 bells. In the manga, she held up at least 15. Eventually, the anime will have her offer 15 bells, but the incremental bells pads the runtime. Since that is the purpose of only 3 bells, the anime adds a line by Yuko. The anime now adds unique scenes of Kayano returning again and again, but this allows us to see more of Yuko's outfits and color. Now, I may be wrong, but I think this first one is an anime exclusive, and the same may be the case for the second. Maybe the latter is in the books, but it might just be based on some other outfits. The anime now covers Kayano rudely stepping into the house, but in her school uniform instead of the outfit seen earlier. Furthermore, she steps far into the house, not just one step in. This third outfit, I think, may also be an anime exclusive, as I don't recognize the bell. Kayano simply holds up all the bells for this line, whereas in the manga she tried to hit Yuko with the 3 bells she currently had, for which Yuko grabs her arm for the next lines. Nonetheless, after some more anime-added lines, Kayano does try to hit Yuko, but Watanuki's line is changed to an utterance. Other visual changes are present, such as the setting on the porch, and Yuko not holding more bells for Kayano, and other lines are likely changed. Yuko now holds up the 15 bells, though where she was hiding them... Kayano's reaction is slightly extended in the anime, but a line of hers and Yuko's are each cut. Yuko holds the bells at a slightly different height between accounts. The anime then cuts Kayano reluctantly accepting the bells and Watanuki's concern. The anime adds a unique scene of the shop. The anime extends the scene start and BGV. The anime blends the scene with dialogue from another manga scene, since this is only Watanuki's second time encountering him, whereas by this point in the manga the two have met additional times before. Hence many lines will be cut, and the context and location differ along with many gestures, etc. The anime cuts the lines dealing with events that haven't occurred yet in the anime and moves on to the conversation about Kayano, also BGV. Watanuki's lines might be changed, but some are definitely added. Also, the anime lacks the bells image. The anime reorders when Haruka says this line. Also, his clothes may be slightly different design between accounts. The anime shows the side table here with the bells and maybe a clock. The manga had no such table, and the bells hung precariously on the bed's frame. Also, small details are changed between accounts regarding the dress and cabinets, while the anime has also moved the lamp, changed its design, and omitted a drawer. Watanuki is given an extra line, also CACs. The anime reorders the rest of this conversation to far later after when Kayano wakes up, and the anime doesn't show her eyes opening here as in the manga. The anime changes how close to the bed frame Kayano is and adds a calendar to the wall. Also, in the anime, the bells end up falling from gravity only while on the table, but in the manga, they may have fallen from her accidentally pushing them slightly while on the bed frame. The anime includes even more bells due to the unique anime events. Also, continuity error. The anime now has a lamp on the table that wasn't there at the start of the scene. Meanwhile, the pillow differs between accounts. The anime adds an utterance by Kayano and uniquely has her fall out of bed. Hence, some panels will differ slightly in visuals between accounts for a bit. The anime reorders the shot of Watanuki and the door opening. The anime adds details to the person emerging through the door, including him trying to turn on the light. Also, the anime has the husband be the one to enter and will have the wife enter later. But the manga only had a woman enter the room and then call out for her mother who lived with her. Hence, many lines, events, and CICs are changed. The anime now covers the reordered dialogue, but with slight changes. The unique additions to this scene serve to further emphasize Kayano is the intruding spirit, something that was a little vague in the manga. The anime has Kayano reach for the bells intentionally to ring them. The manga instead had her accidentally ring them when getting out of bed. Also, the chair's design is different between accounts. The anime now introduces the wife, but her lines are still changed to match the anime events. The anime continues to have Kayano ring the bells, hoping they will make the sounds she hears go away, whereas the manga had her attempt to run out of the room instead due to the sounds by the woman. The anime adds lines where Watanuki as he realizes now Kayano is the one who shouldn't be there. The manga didn't have him learn this fully until Yuko explained it the next night. The anime also adds in this line by Yuko that occurs the next night in the manga. The anime continues to uniquely extend the scene and merges in another shot of Yuko. The woman addresses her husband instead of her mother in another room, and the husband is given extra lines, tying in with the Kohane storyline. Small details in the shot are different, and Watanuki is given an extra line. The anime adds students entering the campus. The anime changes the scene to the school's entrance instead of a hallway, hence visuals are changed accordingly. Also, the Himawari hair and Tampopo changes still apply. Watanuki is given an extra line. The two's lines are changed to match the current scene as Watanuki tries to point out Kayano near them rather than looking through the window down at Kayano. Additional lines are also reordered and others are added or cut. The anime also adds more to the flashback sequence than the manga's version. Also, the people and location in the flashback differ between accounts. Watanuki is given extra lines and adds a shot of Kayano. The anime uniquely extends this scene to connect with the Kohane story, including introducing the concept that she might be a fake here instead of Himawari relaying what occurred in an episode of the Medium show in another scene. The anime then adds a unique scene of Watanuki looking up what people said about Kohane online. The anime also adds Yuko's request, and I think this might be another anime exclusive outfit. In any case, the setting for the scene is inside rather than on the porch, so related differences are present. Watanuki might be given an extra line, and the anime adds a flashback shot of Kayano. Watanuki's line is changed, as in the manga, Yuko said Kayano shouldn't have been there instead. Watanuki is given an extra line, and the anime adds the twins exiting the house. The anime uniquely extends the scene with Watanuki's reaction and additional conversation, as they notice Kayano has moved on from the world. The manga had it end with that line of Yuko's. Episode 9 covers chapters 58, 71 through 72. This opening sequence is the setting for the second dream meeting of Haruka and Watanuki in the manga, but will have an alternate adaptation here. Some visuals are different, including Watanuki's clothing design. The anime adds a unique conversation about cherry trees and a flashback to the ghost to segue into a conversation about Kohane. The manga never had such a conversation with Haruka about Kohane, and the main one for this encounter centered around Himawari. Watanuki's wake-up scene can either be considered changed slightly from the manga or unique. The anime omits the location panel, and the conversation jumps to the Kohane conversation, given the anime omits the Tsubasa crossover chapter prior. This conversation also differs as several lines are changed to reflect the internet hate before explaining why people thought she was a fraud. The anime also adds a whole segment on internet usage and food. The anime adds a unique reasoning for Watanuki to visit Kohane, with the additional information tomorrow is a half day. The manga just had Watanuki stay out to school one of the next days that he made food for her, and so Domiki tagged along. The anime adds a unique scene of Watanuki cooking rather than the aftermath of the Sakura dream as in the manga. The anime also continues the unique scene with researching the hate about Kohane online. The anime also adds more unique foreshadowing to Himawari here. The anime uses unique dialogue as Watanuki wonders what Kohane would like to eat. The manga already had the two share lunch together once, so Watanuki has lines reflecting that encounter. Though in both cases, Watanuki and Domiki argue. Also, the bag containing the food differs between accounts, and Domiki isn't carrying the bag for Watanuki here. The girls discuss how Kohane isn't on TV much rather than the TV episode where she faced the other mediums. Hence, much dialogue is different. Also, the girls are silhouetted in the anime versus more detailed in the manga. Also, CACs. The girls' conversation is also reordered to after Watanuki and Domiki's conversation. The anime omits Watanuki turning to address the girls as in the manga, hence Domiki's line doesn't interrupt whatever Watanuki would have said, making his reaction, a CAC, different between accounts in part due to where he is standing. CAC as the two turn a corner rather than the manga showing the house. The manga also adds a reaction by Watanuki and reorders shots of the exterior. The exterior and house architecture also differ. The anime lacks a street pole in front. The anime adds more garbage in front of the house, and the woods on the wall, among other vandalism, are or maybe slightly different between accounts. Watanuki says this while approaching instead of while still in shock. Hence, as well, Domiki's reaction isn't zoomed. Watanuki clicks thrice instead of twice as in the manga. The anime adds an utterance by Watanuki. The anime adds a zoom shot. BGVs. The anime adds lines by Watanuki and an utterance by Kohane while omitting a shot of Domiki. The upkeep of the house differs somewhat between accounts, and showing it is slightly reordered between accounts, and as with before, the layout of the house differs. The anime omits a pause as Watanuki looks at the expensive clothing her mother buys and for which Kohane carries away, for these clothes aren't present in the anime, but instead boxes are. BGV. The anime adds an utterance by Watanuki and extends the ringing of the phone. The anime adds an automated message line. The anime adds several more repeats of this line while reordering the three's reactions to after adding another automated line. CACs throughout and BGVs. The shot of their hands differs between accounts. The anime cuts Watanuki's shift to the food and Domiki. The anime adds a specification of the foods. This is reminiscent of Chapter 58's food scene that was omitted in the anime, but not word for word from either chapter. Plenty of lines differ as a result. The anime gets back on script here, albeit with slightly different context, and the anime cuts a line by Watanuki. BGV. The anime adds zoom. Normally I would just say CIC, but the scene is too sweet. The anime adds lines by Domiki and Watanuki. The anime adds reactions by the duo. The anime omits the sound Kohane reacts to. Also BGV. The anime shows Satoe closing the door rather than just the door being closed. Satoe's line might be changed slightly. The anime adds extra detail to the removing of the shoes. Satoe's lines might be slightly changed, also BGV. The anime then has Satoe open the door to the kitchen while in the manga she just entered the open room. The anime adds extra emphasis to the bag falling. Satoe doesn't approach further in the anime, and the way Watanuki approaches is slightly different due to the smaller room and different room arrangement. For example, he didn't have his hand on the chair in the anime as in the manga. Satoe doesn't bump into Watanuki when walking past him in the anime as in the manga. The anime lacks Watanuki's reaction along with the Shiyori's reactions. CACs and BGV. Watanuki lacks an arm gesture in the anime as present in the manga. Watanuki is given an extra line. The anime gives Satoe an extra line and shows her grabbing the thermos to splash Watanuki. Watanuki then is simply splashed with hot liquid. Meanwhile, in the manga, Watanuki was going through a bunch of dream events, so he fell asleep right before Satoe attacked, hence the reasoning for why he couldn't dodge the splash. Watanuki's line might be slightly different, also more CACs. Satoe is given an extra line. Satoe is given an extra reaction. BGVs. The twins are added to the scene, so everything they do regarding the cucumbers is unique to the anime. Also, the anime cuts lines by Yuko and Watanuki, also CACs. The anime cuts a line by Watanuki. The anime adds additional dialogue due to the twins and cucumbers. Some of Mokuna's lines are cut, and we get more unique twins lines. The anime then cuts the lines related to dreaming. The anime cuts lines by Watanuki. Yuko's positioning and pose are slightly different between accounts. Mokuna jumps to Watanuki's side instead of onto his face, and of course the twins uniquely jump into the bed too, so the scene is extended with antics. The anime changes the ending to this conversation to be about Kohane, hence Watanuki speaks first. In the manga, Yuko asked if Watanuki had a request to which he wanted to act on his own, and the conversation instead shifted to him asking what Yuko's wish was. The anime adds a unique scene of the Tsuyoris, including Satoe wanting to hit Kohane. The anime adds a scene in a library where Himawari mentions Kohane will go on stage without the mediums. In the manga, this show is what sparked the hate toward Kohane a while ago. The anime adds a unique backstage scene before this medium show. This also serves to give full detail to the other mediums, who were only silhouetted in the manga, but even so, the appearance of them differ between accounts. The anime has Watanuki, Mokina, and Yuko watch the medium show, and so extra dialogue is present as they watch. The manga instead had Himoi and later Yuko in another scene relay what happened while eating lunch with Watanuki and Domiki. Since the visuals and dialogue will change drastically from live events versus the retelling, I'll only specify greater changes when covering this part. For example, the anime includes greetings to the mediums, the building discussed is actually shown and specifics are given about it, the show contained 5 mediums in the anime versus 6 in the manga, more details about the dead man are given, the announcer teases Kohane. Kohane said the woman was murdered 21 years ago in the anime versus that a woman committed suicide 20-ish years ago in the manga. And furthermore, in the anime, Kohane described another ghost in that building on screen, but in the manga, she described a dead woman in the same building as her in the mediums, who died upstairs. Episode 10 covers chapters 58, 71 to 72, and 78 through 81. The anime uniquely opens on Watanuki in a shopping district as he notices more tabloids about Kohane. The anime then continues with another unique scene showing the aftermath of that TV show on screen. The anime adds a unique scene of Watanuki and Himoi talking about the show. This conversation is reminiscent of the recounting of the show seen in the manga by Himoi and Yuko, but with no exact parallels, just some similar lines. The anime continues with a unique scene of the duo, which continues as they travel to Kohane's house. Meanwhile, a bunch of reporters are gathering around it, and the two have to force themselves through to get inside. In the manga, there is no such interaction, and the next time the two attempt to visit Kohane is after she was assaulted on TV and the hate around her, including the vandalism at her house getting worse. Meanwhile, she wasn't home, so the two had to seek her out at the recording studio. The unique scenes continue as the two rescue Kohane from a quote-unquote cleansing abuse by Satoe, though the anime does echo the manga in some lines, as in each case Satoe blames the bad publicity on readings by Kohane, while her powers were supposedly weakened by ingesting impure things. But in the manga, Satoe was instead shouting at Kohane backstage at the next show. As the two accounts are drastically different, I will summarize the manga here, but in both cases this marks a scene where the duo rescue Kohane from abuse and take her to Yuko's. And with that said, the warning here. The images that follow do show graphic images as several characters are assaulted in the manga events. If you wish to skip this section, please see the timestamp on screen. In the manga, Kohane appeared on a show to help tell a woman what happened to her missing husband. Meanwhile, right before the show, the manga showed a flashback of Kohane's father leaving them and Satoe losing it in response, telling Kohane to never lie. In the backstage exchange, Satoe snaps further, telling Kohane to lie if she has to on stage, to which Kohane finds her out to the situation. The two mediums take the stage. One says the husband is alive, but Kohane proclaims him dead, leading to the wife assaulting Kohane. Kohane then proclaims to the audience she was told to say what she said by her mother, even if it was a lie. This, along with more said in the scene, caused the world to want to protect Kohane from her possibly abusive or neglectful mother, though Kohane did whisper to the wife that she, the wife, murdered the husband and hid the body. Kohane wasn't lying. Much more is said, and all attention turns to Satoe as she snaps completely, assaulting Kohane and then Watanuki, who stepped in to protect her. Domiki then pushes past security and stops Satoe from assaulting them any further with his grabbing of the arm scene that remains loosely adapted in the anime after Satoe splashes Watanuki with hot water. After realizing someone was at the window, Satoe stops her tirade, and the anime continues its unique account in the house as it is revealed Kohane had been receiving ablutions for a prolonged period of time while also being denied food, leading to the two taking her away to Yuko's. The manga, meanwhile, placed far more emphasis on the mother's defeat. CAC, and that night at the shop, the anime doesn't have it raining as the manga does. The anime shows Kohane's arrival at the shop instead of cutting to later in the night. As part of this unique scene, Yuko's outfit seems to be another anime exclusive. In a rather different setting, the anime now covers Yuko's comments on the earlier Medium show, but with slight line changes among other cuts. As such, Yuko explains in the anime how Kohane saw another ghost in the house rather than the manga's account of a ghost in the studio. Extra visuals are also given to the anime's depiction. Watanuki's apron doesn't have the angry cat on it in the anime as in the manga, as he didn't receive this apron for his birthday in the anime. In addition to a cut line from the story change, the anime lacks the effect of spirits as a parallel to Watanuki that the manga has. Rather than the manga visuals of many against one, the anime shows Kohane's happiness with the twins and Mokina. Since the anime already covered essentially the entire Kohane arc, the anime cuts to the end of the conversation. The anime continues its unique scene portion as the others enter the room and everyone shares a meal together. The manga instead had Kohane pour her heart and backstory out to Watanuki, while Yuko, Domaki, and Mokina discuss the situation on the porch. The entire manga portion is here to read as it is quite touching. The anime adds a scene of Kohane waking alongside the extras. The anime has Watanuki cooking soup instead of rice balls. Also, Domaki isn't present as in the manga. The dialogue as such differs drastically between accounts, as Kohane wants to go home in the anime versus wanting her mother to stop being surrounded by the fog around her, a fog of revenge. The anime has Watanuki take Kohane most of the way home, but he brings along the balloon from the dream buyer. This balloon will later solve Kohane's mother's issues and lead to a happier lifestyle for the two. This balloon account was way different in the manga, as in a previous dream with Haruka, Watanuki was told to keep the balloon on him at school the next day, Haruka sensing Watanuki would be in danger and would need it. This would be the day he falls out the window otherwise. As Watanuki walks to school, he sees Kohane, who wanted to return his umbrella. The manga then reveals Kohane doesn't attend school, and the two share a meal together as she hasn't eaten yet. At the end of the meal, Watanuki gives Kohane the balloon as a good luck charm, and the scene also served to solidify her calling him Kimihiro, something I overlooked as she has done so casually throughout the anime since he called her Kohane. This prior change alters the dialogue with some changed and other lines added and cut. Kohane returns home. In the manga, Yuko told her that the best thing would be for her mother to spend time alone, so Kohane goes to live with a bachan, but still found time to give the balloon to Satoe before leaving her alone. The anime adds a unique scene at the shop and continues the unique scene at the Suyuri's. The balloon pops, causing the murdered woman's corpse to fall out the wall, which will reveal to the world that Kohane was telling the truth. But the anime also adds a unique scene of Kohane meeting the ghost. In the manga, the balloon she gave to her mom is never revealed to have popped or not. The anime continues unique scenes of this revelation's aftermath. I gotta emphasize the anime and manga's version differences here, for the anime has the characters believe Kohane is strong enough that the abuse and trauma won't affect her as much as a normal person, but the manga had her crying all night finally, because of how much it impacted her, but for which she didn't let get expressed until safe and vulnerable enough to do so. The anime includes a unique scene revealing Kohane will move away with her mother and the two won't do any more spiritual shows, etc. The anime shows a unique scene of Watanuki going off to meet Kohane and finding her at Domaki's with an anime original hairstyle. The anime ends with Kohane happily going off with her mother as the balloon granted her dream where Satoe wouldn't be in pain anymore. As mentioned in the manga, it is unclear if this eventually happened. As sweet of an ending as the anime account is, it's time to show the far superior manga account. I normally don't say what is better, but this is worth the time to explain. In the manga account while at the shop, after all the crying and support from Watanuki, Yuko, Domaki, etc., Kohane shares her wish with Yuko that Kohane wants to live a happy life, but understands that her own happiness must come first, and that she can only hope her mother's will come later. As such, she offers up her power to see and exercise spirits. Living such a new life will hopefully help teach her mother a new way to live, and if nothing else, Yuko and the others will be there to help Kohane through life. The manga then has Yuko only take away Kohane's power to exercise spirits, so she can still see any dangers around her and use her sight to help herself and others. The manga reveals her power came from one of Sakura's feathers, tying into the Tsubasa storyline in a critical way. After this, Kohane is able to live happily and goes to live with Abachan, something that the anime retcons for the OVAs. This ending isn't exactly a everyone lived happily ever after, but it is a much more realistic and emotional take, as Kohane is finally free from the physical and emotional abuse and has had a strong support net at work going forward. Episode 11 covers chapters 57 through 60. The anime opens with a unique shot of the school entry and students, and then a unique scene of Watanuki and Himawari, which leads to a reminder that his pinky has been affected. The anime continues its unique scene as the pinky bothers Watanuki at the shop. I guess now would be a good time as any to mention that in the manga, the pinky promise happened very shortly before Watanuki's near-death experience, and so only Yuko, Kohane, and Haruka mentioned anything related to it aside from the water jug incident. Hence, it never had a chance to continuously be a bother in the manga. This part of the conversation reflects the prior conversation about the finger during the water jug incident and follows the script verbatim, but with scenery changes and CACs, and like before, the flashback aura differs. The anime changes Yuko's line to match the current events instead of the water jug incident events. Hence, the anime extends the scene with flashbacks and extra dialogue. The anime extends the scenery shots of the temple. The anime adds a zoom on the moon. Since the anime covered these lines before, this time the anime changes their lines to reflect what Watanuki already knows to call Haruka by his first name. Other lines are also cut in the anime and CACs throughout. The anime slightly changes Watanuki's line. Haruka's eyes are closed in the anime but open in the manga. Since the anime covered the name portion of the conversation earlier, it is cut here, and Watanuki's line is changed as a result, as the scene is slightly extended with an extra line by Watanuki instead of a line by Haruka, as the subject gets back on track. The smoke is less prominent in the anime versus the manga. The scenery is also slightly different, for example bushes in the anime rather than a tree in the manga. Haruka's lines are changed in the anime, which also cuts a line by Watanuki. The conversation will continue to feature changed lines, although these might actually be the lines said between panels in the manga, as the conversation jumps to after Watanuki talks about the last events a bit. After some more added and cut lines, the anime gets back on script but cuts a line by Haruka. Aside from BGVs and more CACs, the anime lacks smoke for this shot. The anime adds Haruka smoking more, which was only implied in the manga. And I just realized Haruka's outfit differs in style between accounts. Haruka stands before saying his next lines in the anime versus the manga had him start these lines while seated. Also, his lines are changed in the anime as Watanuki already gave away the balloon, so Haruka instead tells him to stay together with Shizuka. The rest of the conversation's ending also changes since Watanuki and Haruka have spoken more times before in the anime. Finally, upon waking, obviously the balloon isn't there in the anime as in the manga. The anime adds an exterior shot and Watanuki yawning along with more CACs. The twins are also uniquely shown talking to each other beforehand, and they are given extra lines in the anime. Watanuki says this while standing in the anime, but while seated in the manga. The twins' next lines are also changed slightly, added, and cut, and the anime omits them, giving Watanuki a Yuko mask too. Watanuki is also given an extra line in the anime. The prior change omits the mask from the shot. The street view differs between accounts, in part because of the lack of a balloon in the anime. Since the anime lacks the balloon, Watanuki's lines are changed. Since the Kohane arc has concluded, she looks much different in the anime versus the manga here, which had this scene as only the third time they met. This and the episode's earlier changes will drastically change this encounter. Watanuki is given an extra line. Kohane gives thanks in the anime versus giving back the umbrella as in the manga. The lines for a while differ as a result. Watanuki offers some show cream instead of to take Kohane on a date in the park to eat. Many of this I've covered before, but this is a big event change in the adaptation. Though in the anime, Kohane declines as she has to go, but she indulges in food in the manga. Watanuki offers a snack rather than the balloon due to the mentioned differences. The lines are heavily condensed to match the anime account as a result. The two are given extra lines. Watanuki is given an extra reaction. The visual here is much more foreboding in the anime versus the manga, and Watanuki is given an extra utterance. The anime adds a visual and then reorders when Domiki turns off the water, also CACs throughout. The anime cuts lines by both characters, also some lines might be changed or added. The anime cuts lines by Domiki and Watanuki. Due to all the anime changes, Watanuki is given lines instead of Domiki here, and much more dialogue is changed or cut. Similarly, the lines about Domiki's lunch being eaten by Kohane in the manga are changed to reference the anime's show cream. Additional lines about the balloon are cut from the conversation. The anime adds an utterance by Watanuki. Watanuki is given an extra line to start, and then his lines are changed slightly. CAC in the anime adds a room sign. The visuals of characters here slightly differ and BGVs throughout the scene. Also, the anime adds flashback lines for Kohane. CACs throughout. A line by Himawari is cut due to the anime order of episodes. Watanuki's lines are changed to match the anime events. The anime adds a slew of vine-like visuals rather than just having Watanuki hit the glass. Also, the visuals of Watanuki falling slightly differ between accounts, and the scene is extended with glass emphasis instead of just the bags emphasis of the manga. The anime extends Himawari's reaction. The anime adds audible crying before Watanuki's lines. Also, the position Watanuki starts in differs between accounts. The anime extends the scene, showing Watanuki try to move. The anime adds emphasis to the spheres and gives Watanuki an audible response. The anime adds Watanuki trying to move and an utterance. The anime adds extra animation and emphasis to this scene. The anime uniquely shows Watanuki landing back on the ground and cuts all the parents' lines, as this would tie in with the Tsubasa account. Watanuki is instead given extra lines. The anime lacks the glass that the manga still has present for this last panel. Also, Watanuki's arms are in a different position between accounts, and his glasses aren't on the ground in the anime versus the manga. The anime also cuts a couple crying panels and adds CACs. Watanuki is given audible utterances, and Haruka's appearance slightly differs between accounts. The anime lacked Watanuki for this shot. CAC. The anime cuts a line by Haruka and changes the room visuals, including adding a lamp and moving the location of the glasses and incense slightly. Watanuki is given an extra utterance. CACs and BGV. The anime might add a line by Yuko specifying the butterfly communicated her message to Domoki. The anime adds flashbacks. The anime changes Yuko's line to 2 people instead of 3 people as in the manga. This avoids the link to Tsubasa Lee and the Tsubasa series. The room visuals differ between accounts, and if I forgot to mention for a while in the anime, the clothes are the winter uniform for this episode, but the summer uniform in the manga. Himawari doesn't approach during these lines as in the manga, and Yuko says her lines in the anime before leaving instead of as she leaves in the manga. The anime also adds a bow by Himawari. The anime slightly extends this segment, including with an utterance by Watanuki. The anime adds an utterance by Watanuki. The anime adds a pan-up effect. The anime adds an utterance by Watanuki. The anime shows the flashback image instead of just relaying the words as in the manga. Also, Watanuki turned his head in the anime, but he didn't in the manga. CAC. BGV. Himawari's line might be slightly changed. The anime adds a moody shot of Himawari before she responds. Episode 12 covers chapters 60 through 63. CAC. The anime retcons the prior event, as in the anime, the accident didn't occur with Himawari present in Season 1, but it did so in the manga. Also, the anime doesn't show a flashback of this event as in the manga. Meanwhile, the anime flashback of the 100 Ghost Stories didn't have the hands grab Watanuki as in the manga. And the angel event shot is a CAC and lacks a smoke effect in the anime while adding the spirit attacking. The anime then adds flashback shots instead of just showing Watanuki. Also, Himawari's lines might be slightly changed. The anime adds several effect changes and CACs for the duration of her backstory. The anime adds a flashback visual, and another, and another, and her line might be slightly changed. Another set of unique flashback visuals. Himawari's eyes are open in the anime but closed in the manga. The anime adds another unique flashback sequence instead of Watanuki's reaction and Himawari, but Watanuki's reaction is reordered to appear in a moment. The anime uniquely adds an ooze effect on Himawari that will persist for a bit, instead of the manga having her standing as normal. Himawari's line might be slightly changed. The anime cuts a line by Watanuki and another reaction shot of him. The anime adds animation to her closing her eyes and a CIC. Himawari's pose differs slightly between accounts. The anime adds extra emphasis to her turning around. The anime changes the emphasis from her hips to her head. More CACs. BGV. BGV. The anime adds a glare by Himawari. CACs. The anime adds lines by Himawari and Watanuki. CAC, and the anime has Himawari lower her arm here, whereas she didn't lower it in the manga. The anime adds a pattern to the door. The blood pattern on Domaki slightly differs between accounts. The anime adds emphasis to Yuko's feet. Watanuki might be given an extra line. BGV. Watanuki is given an extra line. The anime will reorder a page of dialogue to a minute later, but most importantly cuts the section that ties into the Tsubasa storyline. The anime adds extra emphasis on the pinky. The anime adds Watanuki looking down at the pinky, hence more CACs. Yuko is given an extra line. BGV, and Watanuki is given an extra line. Watanuki's line is slightly changed. Yuko's line is slightly changed to regard both of them instead of just Himawari, hence the context of her explaining Domaki's price is slightly different, and is said at a slightly different moment between accounts. Domaki's chest is more exposed in the anime versus the manga. Apart from the CIC, the blood on Domaki's head differs between accounts. BGV. The anime adds emphasis to the tears and extends Himawari walking. BGV. The way Himawari wipes away the tears is slightly extended in the anime. The scars slightly differ between accounts. The visuals for this shot differ a bit with a BGV and a cut of a Watanuki panel to start. Watanuki is given an extra utterance. The room and chair patterns slightly differ between accounts. Watanuki is given a sigh of relief and an extra line. Watanuki is given an extra utterance. BGV, also Watanuki's arms are in a slightly different position between accounts. CACs. The anime emphasizes its anime-exclusive lamp. Yuko is given extra lines. Watanuki might be given an extra line. The anime emphasizes the egg a little earlier than the manga. The BGV differs slightly, but this is still the same design. The dream visuals differ between accounts, and the anime adds extra angles and effects. The anime shows both hands, the manga only showed the egg hand. In addition to more differing effects and possibly changed lines, the anime adds Watanuki gripping the egg with both hands. Watanuki is given extra lines instead of the egg's lines. Also, the anime lacks the cracking egg effects the manga uses. Watanuki is given an extra utterance before extra lines as he looks for the egg, for which it has grown bigger and will hatch here. The manga instead had the bird appear immediately as it already hatched while Watanuki was asleep. These changes will alter how the scene goes for a bit, but with the same lines, albeit with extra tropes in the anime. CSCs throughout. BGV. The anime adds the bird flying back to Watanuki in an extended sequence. BGV. The anime slightly extends the scene with a line by Watanuki. The scenery visuals slightly differ, but more importantly, the watershi don't appear in the anime as in the manga, hence several pages are cut, but these will be adapted in the Spring Dream Chronicles. The anime extends this chase sequence and adds the bird circling the two. Also, the uniforms still differ between accounts. Watanuki is also given more antics in the anime. Watanuki might be given an extra line, and a bird isn't landing on his shoulder at this very moment in the anime versus the manga. CACs throughout. Watanuki is given more antics, and Domaki's stare is emphasized more in the anime. The anime adds, I think this is a dog, to the shot. The anime slightly extends the shot of the bird. Himawari's eyes are open in the anime but closed in the manga. BGV. The anime adds a scenic shot, helping show this next part occurs a little ways later. The anime slightly extends the bird's chirping and motions. The location is different between accounts and more CACs. The anime extends the conversation to include part of what the manga shows at lunch that day. The manga just ended with the last comments. The anime adds sweat effects to Watanuki and a BGV for the bird in Watanuki, and it also adds an extra shot of the bird. Also, I'm just now noticing Watanuki still has a bandage in the anime, but doesn't in the manga. The anime gives Tampopo a reaction, and Domeki and Watanuki's lines are changed in the anime and a line or two is cut. Watanuki is given an extra antic. Tampopo is given extra chirps, and he flies around rather than staying put in the manga. The duo's lines are reordered to after Himura's in the anime. Himura is given an extra laugh. Watanuki's line might be slightly changed. The anime extends this ending sequence as they walk to school. The anime adds a unique scene of Yuko at the shop. Episode 13 covers chapters 47 and 67. The episode begins with a unique after-school shot and scene of the trio out shopping. This will also feature several characters as throwbacks for the anime, including Hanahana, Kaoruko, and Sakurako, Obachan, and Nurie. The anime visual differs from the manga, and there are CACs along with a location change. Also, Watanuki isn't wearing a long coat in the anime as in the manga. Watanuki's lines are changed. The anime adds the good smell a little earlier than the manga. BGV and Watanuki is given more antics in the anime as well as extra lines. The location of the fox hand is different, being the woods in the anime, but the street in the manga. Also, BGV, also the bag folds differ between accounts. The anime adds Watanuki's bags going flying. Watanuki might be given an extra line, but it is definitely given more antics. Due to the prior changes, Watanuki is on a bench in the anime, but the street in the manga. Other visuals will differ throughout the scene. Watanuki doesn't point to the hand in the anime as in the manga, in part from his position change. The anime adds a flashback scene. Watanuki's line is changed. The farewell is slightly extended in the anime, and the anime adds Watanuki staring at the box. The anime adds a unique scene in the kitchen. Yuko's lines are changed/cut, and Mokuna's lines are cut. Also, as usual, CACs in the room layout/design differs between accounts. Mokuna's lines are cut, and the scene is uniquely extended in the anime, including adding the twins to the scene along with other comedy bits before getting back on script with the added visual of Watanuki having eaten. Yuko's reaction and line are slightly extended. Watanuki gulps in the anime only. The anime adds another unique city scene with older characters, including Hanahana again and Rie. This is significant as it shows she made a recovery in the anime, whereas in the manga it was highly unlikely she would ever recover from the Fei Wong soul-snatching incident. Watanuki is given an extra line, and the anime omitted the pages showing the two heading out shopping. The anime omits Yuko singing and instead has her run through the store while showing unique Chobits cameos of Shinbo and Sumomo. Watanuki's line is changed as a result, and the two are each given an extra line. This change also causes Watanuki to uniquely get winded. His next lines might be changed, but if nothing else, the advertisements differ between accounts, as does the entire store layout and visuals. Yuko says this while against a fridge instead of holding her hand to her cheek. Also, her line might be slightly changed. The anime cuts Mokuna's line as he isn't present as in the manga. Apart from the CAC, more throughout, the anime adds Obachan in the store. BGV. Watanuki's location differs between accounts. The anime makes more clear the effects on the fridges, albeit with a BGV more throughout, by adding static across the screen and sound to go with it. This effect will carry on for a while, unlike the manga's account. The anime lacks Watanuki's hand gesture, and there are tons of CACs. Watanuki is given an extra utterance. Also, the fridge has a price tag in the anime only. The anime also extends this realization of the defect and adds extra emphasis to the hand, which I never noticed before in the books as it is so faint. But the anime adds a face creeping around the fridge too. The anime doesn't show Yuko opening a fridge as the manga does. The anime adds Yuko turning here along with CACs and BGVs. The anime adds Watanuki holding his hand to his eye and an utterance. The fridge design differs between accounts, and the anime adds a price tag. The anime adds appearances by legal drugs for Kuro and Kazahaya. Hence, Yuko's lines are different, but Watanuki's were verbatim still. The anime uniquely adds Watanuki getting drinks and going up an escalator instead of walking through a store. Also, the zap is added a little earlier in the anime. The anime reorders Watanuki's reaction and the first quick flash. Also, the visuals for the Vaiju bouncing all over the place are different between accounts, as potentially is where he lands. The anime slightly extends this meeting. Watanuki is given an extra utterance and another here. The Vaiju's line might be slightly different, also CACs throughout. The anime cuts lines by Watanuki and Yuko. Mokona continues to be absent in the anime. The anime adds Watanuki turning for his lines. The CAC doesn't let us see Watanuki's irritation. Watanuki is given bandages in the anime only and gives Vaiju an extra line. Vaiju is given an extra visual for this BGV, and Watanuki is given arm motions for the scene in the anime only. Vaiju is given an extra reaction, and Watanuki's zap is made more comical in the anime. CACs, also the anime slightly extends this with lines by Watanuki and a threat of zapping. Watanuki's line might be slightly changed. Vaiju zaps Watanuki as soon as grabbed versus after being freed in the manga. Yuko's pose differs between accounts, and a line is cut since Mokona isn't here. A line by Vaiju is cut. The anime adds zaps behind the shop. The manga instead had the repairs in the shop. CACs and Yuko is wearing her hat in the anime, but not in the manga. Also, her lines might be changed. Mokona hops into the fridge to wave a flag in the anime versus just hopping up to a shelf in it in the manga. Also, Vaiju is now floating in the anime versus on the shelf in the manga. Watanuki's reaction lacks arm gestures in the anime, and his next gestures are different between accounts. The anime uniquely has the twins wheel in other electronics for fixing. The anime cuts to Watanuki carrying drinks, which doesn't occur until a ways into the next conversation in the manga. The anime adds tassels to the pillows and CACs throughout. Vaiju's line is changed, then Watanuki's line, as before, is reordered to now. Also, the anime adds more designs around the house. Watanuki is given extra lines, which leads to a fearful offering of tea, which is received with gratitude and a reaction to that in the anime only. Yuko and Vaiju's conversation is changed since Watanuki is present, but also especially to tie in with the anime blending this with a Fox Food Court return chapter. As such, several changes are about to occur, including Himawari, Yuko, etc., going to the food court rather than just Watanuki and Domiki. This leads to some comical visuals in the anime. The anime uniquely adds the group meeting at Domiki's to bring the food cart to them. The manga either had the duo walking in the street to go to the cart, or the Vaiju event staying at Yuko's depending on the chapter. The anime also uniquely brings back Watanuki's pocket watch from the first episode. I don't recall it ever appearing again in the manga, but feel free to correct me there. While much has changed, some dialogue is from the script, but Domiki isn't plugging his ears in the anime as in the manga. This line by Yuko is also said by her here instead of Domiki, reiterating what she said off-screen in the manga. Mugetsu is also included in this anime blend. Also, Himawari has reverted to her old hairstyle, but she should be staying in the new one as the manga shows. Vaiju says this in the anime versus Domiki in the manga. The food cart appearing is extended in the anime, and its appearance is slightly different between accounts, with an extra lantern in the anime. Since many lines are added by the others, I'll try to stick to differences when the manga script takes center stage. The anime adds more older characters, including a dream buyer and a Kari. The fox boy is putting dishes down in the anime versus carrying them in the manga. Watanuki is given an extra remark, and the fox boy's line might be slightly changed. The anime omits Domiki greeting the cart owner. The fox boy is given extra giggles, also BGVs and CACs. The fox boy is given an audible utterance, and the anime lacks the sparkle visuals from the manga. The fox boy is given an extra line. The anime gives the fox boy extra reactions while replacing Domiki and the owner's reactions with Yuko and Himawari's. The anime cuts lines by Domiki and Watanuki, changes the visual, and then adds the owner petting his son, and also adds the cat girl to this blend. The anime adds the unique scene of everyone enjoying the night. The anime also adds a throwback to the nectar. The anime adds the Watashi arriving, but unfortunately Zashiki Watashi isn't wearing the hair clips in the scene like she should. The anime also adds the Tengu to this mix. The dream bias specifies the dream he bought has grown up well, but this isn't specified in the manga. The anime gets back on script for a moment as Raiju heads off, but of course with different context to the setting. Also in the anime, the rain started before he declares leaving, but in the manga it starts raining right after he says this. The next lines are unique to the anime, but Raiju's next lines are verbatim, though said while floating up, rather than while seated as in the manga. The visuals are slightly different, but aside from the added context reactions rather than just Watanuki's, the scene is accurate. I think Mokina says this in both accounts, but he isn't on screen when speaking as in the manga. Raiju is then given an extra line. Lines are then added by Yuko and Mokina, as lines by Watanuki and Yuko are cut. The anime then proceeds with more unique scenes to end the season, although Yuko's lines are reminiscent of the chapter being adapted, same is said for these lines. The anime adds one more unique grab bag of monsters to the mix with potential characters from both the Monster Possession and movie. And now we move into the OVAs, starting with the Spring Dream Chronicles. Episode 1 covers chapters 54, 69, 74, 76, and 82 through 83, along with Tsubasa Chapter 168. The episode begins with a unique sequence of Watanuki in a hallway. Watanuki opens the door to find Yuko. In the manga, Watanuki had undergone several dream sequences before this and supposedly woke up in tears from the last dream before walking to the door and opening it to find Yuko. Hence he started without tears and in a hall in the anime versus with tears and in the bedroom in the manga. Also, the tree and location visuals differ between accounts. That said, this may also be taken from a prior chapter where Watanuki just met Sakura in dreams, and so he wouldn't have tears in his eyes. Both events look very similar to start. The wind is blowing in different directions between accounts, also CACs throughout. Yuko is given a line instead of Watanuki wondering if he is in another dream. The anime jumps to Kohane and the others at Obachan's, retconning the prior season in favor of showing Kohane living there now as in the manga, adding location shots in the anime. The tray differs in composition, and the anime adds a small bowl. The anime slightly extends the cooking scene. The anime cuts a line by Kohane, also CACs throughout. Watanuki and Kohane are given extra lines, and the scene is extended slightly. Just noticed, but Watanuki is wearing glasses in the scene but isn't in the manga. Obachan's outfit is slightly different between accounts. Kohane is given an extra line. A line by Kohane is cut. The anime adds hallway shots. The way Watanuki opens the door or doors differs between accounts, and his apron doesn't have the angry cat as in the manga. The anime extends Domaki eating and cuts his line. A line by Watanuki is cut. Laughs by Obachan are cut and Kohane is given an extra line. The table setup is slightly different between accounts. Obachan is given extra lines. Many lines and backstory pages are also cut before Domaki's next lines that are possibly slightly changed themselves. Also, Watanuki's line is slightly changed. BGV and Watanuki is given an extra utterance. Watanuki's pose initially differs between accounts. Obachan's line might be slightly different, and utterance of pose is cut, and Kohane is given an extra line. Domaki stands a little earlier in the anime than the manga. The anime adds an angry cat sound effect, and Watanuki is given extra lines. A line might also be cut, but the subtitles are a bit cheap in this copy of the show, so I can't tell. Watanuki's pose differs between accounts. Watanuki is given an audible utterance, and this pause is slightly extended with a ringing sound. Also BGVs. The anime omits Watanuki looking at Yuko's words. Obachan's next lines are changed slightly, and the conversation is extended. The anime doesn't focus on Yuko's words for this line, but does focus on them in a moment, albeit with a slightly different wood and holder design. BGV. The design for the glass differs between accounts, and the anime uniquely zooms in on it. Also, CACs and the room and box designs differ between accounts. Also, BGVs. The anime adds visuals for the story rather than showing Kohane and Domeki talking. The house visuals differ between accounts. A line by Domeki is cut. CACs, BGV, but the anime lacks the smoke visual the manga had. Some of Domeki's lines might be changed, but they might be verbatim. A line by Kohane is cut. The visuals here are slightly changed and extended. BGV. The anime adds clouds and cuts a stairwell. The anime then extends and adds some visuals and cuts a bridge in the background. The anime shows more detail on the cat. BGVs. Kohane's and Domeki's lines are changed, and the anime cuts several lines in the conversation before moving on to these lines with different and added visuals. The lines and motions are slightly reordered. Kohane's lines are changed, as are the visuals. The anime also cuts the remainder of the conversation centered around Domeki's egg, which was after all cut from the anime prior, but the final visual of their hands is more or less the same. The house design is different between accounts. Abachan's lines are changed slightly, and the anime lacks Abachan's hand position change. CACs in the anime cuts lines by Watanuki and Kohane. Kohane is given an audible utterance. Kohane and Watanuki are given extra lines. The anime cuts lines by the duo discussing Kohane living with Abachan instead of Satoe. The conversation is changed, omitting talk at the balloon as the anime events differ. The anime also adds flashback scenes. The anime further extends the scene with unique dialogue. This dialogue also retcons Season 2, as Yuko promised not to tell Watanuki what either paid, but somehow he knows Domeki paid the blood. Meanwhile, in the manga, Watanuki may have known about the blood as Yuko told him, but he may have fallen asleep right before she spoke, so he likely didn't know in either case. Mokuna jumps on Watanuki to greet him. In the manga, Mokuna stayed on Yuko's shoulder, hence some visuals are changed and some dialogue is either cut or changed slightly. CACs throughout. Watanuki's line is changed, which also leads to unique lines by Yuko. Domeki's location differs between accounts. The anime visual for this only has Mokuna in the air rather than on Watanuki, and with Yuko twirling a towel in the manga. The scene is extended due to the prior anime dialogue with Domeki. The anime adds a unique scene of Yuko and Domeki. The anime retcons itself again to relay 3 people paid for Watanuki's injuries, as the anime continues this unique scene by relaying who Watanuki repaid. The anime now covers a chapter skipped in the anime prior. The anime cuts the lines before Tsubasa Lee's arrival. The visual of dimension distortion and subsequent arrival are slightly different between accounts. Also in the anime, Watanuki is in a different location than the manga. This change causes Watanuki to react to Tsubasa Lee's arrival in the anime only. CAC and more throughout. BGV. The anime reorders Watanuki's reaction and Tsubasa Lee's zoom shot. The anime adds a shot of Yuko and slightly extends the scene. The anime gives Tsubasa Lee an extra line and cuts the rest of the scene. In the manga, Tsubasa Lee didn't say this line until several volumes later as Watanuki met him in dreams. The anime goes back to the unique scene of Yuko and adds in a shot relating to Tsubasa's Spring Thunder Chronicle OVAs. This shot also changes the location of the characters in it, extends how long Tsubasa Lee stays on the ground, and gives him an extra line. The anime adds a unique meeting of Watanuki and Haruka in dreams. As a unique follow-up to the dream, the anime adds a sort of scavenger hunt plot, so I only need to cover the similarities when the manga plot does overlap. While this flashback is unique to the anime, Yuko is wearing her Chapter 69 winter attire. The duo are either transported into the book or into a dream about the book for these events. In the manga, Watanuki ended up living the story for some random reason in a chapter where it is unclear exactly when Watanuki is dreaming and when he's awake. Extra emphasis is added to the fishing, and Watanuki's lines are added and changed to reflect the anime account. Watanuki is given extra lines. The way Watanuki falls is different between accounts. Watanuki is kneeling in the anime but standing in the manga. The moon differs between accounts and CAC. Domiki is shown picking up his case in the anime, and Watanuki doesn't have his own picked up yet as in the manga. More CACs, and Watanuki doesn't have his hand raised in the anime as in the manga. Watanuki's lines have then possibly changed a bit, and he is given extra hand motions as he looks around in the anime. He is also given an extra reaction. The anime extends their approach and has Watanuki holding his case over his head instead of by his side. The way a girl opens the door and/or curtain differs between accounts. The girl is given an audible response, as is Watanuki. The anime extends the women approaching, has a CAC, and extends the scene with lines by Watanuki and the women. Some of the women's clothing designs are slightly different between accounts, and the anime actually shows us the leftmost woman, who is cut off by the speech bubble in the manga, and the anime adds a woman on the far right, who may have been covered by the girl who answered the door. CACs throughout, and the anime changes the food and drinks on the table. The lines by the three might be slightly condensed in the anime. The anime adds Domiki to the shot. Watanuki's hand position differs slightly between accounts. Watanuki's line might be slightly cut. Aside from the continued CACs, Watanuki stops because he hears voices in the anime versus wings flapping in the manga. Also, he is given an extra utterance in the anime. The anime scene is then slightly extended as they approach, and the anime adds one woman changing forms. Animations are also added throughout the scene, and some lines may be added by the women. The location and some hairstyles of the women differ between accounts. Also, the anime has 7 women instead of 6 in the manga. Also, the anime doesn't show the screen doors at the edges, still showing 2 of the women's wings behind them. 3 blades are seen in the anime instead of 2 in the manga, and then a line by Watanuki is cut. The escape scene is then extended in the anime while also cutting some visuals and changing the bird visuals a bit. The duo are given extra lines, and then their lines are slightly changed to reflect the anime events in the book from the temple. The anime actually shows the woman gaining and extends the scene with the other women gaining too and attacking. When Domiki throws the bait, it goes behind everyone. In the manga, the women never caught up, so it lands about on them. The reactions are also split a bit, and the visuals after differ a bit with the wings. Meanwhile, one of the duo's lines is cut. One of Watanuki's breaths might be cut. Domiki is given an extra line. A line by Watanuki might be cut, also CAC and BGV. The anime uniquely cuts back to the shrine scene, revealing the dream or book transportation. The manga ended the chapter there, and so remains slightly unclear if it was a dream or not. Episode 2 covers chapters 7, 62, 66, 70, 72, 76 through 77, and Tsubasa chapters 174 and 183. The anime uniquely opens in a continuation of the scavenger hunt as they head to the pond. The Watashi appear now, in a sense ignoring their appearance in the final season 2 episode, as Zashiki Watashi wanted to see Watanuki after his injuries. In the manga, this occurred right after he was well again and off to school to also deliver the bird to Himuroi. Watanuki might be given an extra line. Also, Ama Watashi uses her umbrella to point rather than just her hand as in the manga. Due to the changed events, Tampopo isn't here to peep, so all instances of that are cut. In part because Zashiki Watashi is holding the note from Haruki here, her hand positions differ between accounts. Also CACs throughout, and Zashiki Watashi is given extra motions and sounds. Watanuki's lines are changed, and he lacks his gestures in the anime. Additional lines are also cut. The anime adds a sound effect. Zashiki Watashi doesn't get far as Ama Watashi catches her. In the manga, the former ran quite a ways away and eventually came back after Watanuki talked to Ama Watashi. Overall, Watanuki's lines are cut down, and the anime cuts the conversation in favor of a unique one. The anime then continues the unique scavenger hunt plot and changes, reorders, and partially cuts the Watashi farewell lines, and gives Watanuki and Zashiki Watashi an extra line each, while changing the visuals of how the Watashi leave. The anime will then follow its unique plot for a couple scenes, including the bath scene and the phone call with Yuko. The anime takes inspiration from the first volume and decides to include a version of the mirror fortune-telling, The lines by Yuko are the same initially, but the context is far different, being a cloudy night at a temple in the anime versus a sun shower at the shop in the manga, though the anime adds extra lines in reference to this change. Meanwhile, the visuals of Watanuki are different. The anime has Himawari mention rain, which will segue into the next part of the unique plot. The manga had Watanuki hear passing kids talking about coming over, which was a premonition that the Tsubasa group would arrive at the shop that day. But in both cases, Watanuki opened his eyes in surprise, but with an audible utterance in the anime. While this conversation is relatively unique, it references the conversation from Chapter 66 that didn't get fully adapted in Season 2. The anime then continues its unique set of scenes, for example the umbrella stand, the key, and the box. The anime has opening this box transport Watanuki into the world of dreams. In the manga, Watanuki naturally went into dreams one night and talked with Haruka, who introduced Watanuki to Sakura, who had crossed into dreams in the Tsubasa storyline. The anime adds emphasis to the tree and petals and slightly extends the scene with visuals and lines by Haruka. Also, Watanuki's clothes differ between accounts due to the nature of how and when he entered dreams. Also CACs. The conversation changes now to match the anime account. Due to the changes, the lines leading to meeting Sakura and why Haruka wanted the two to meet have also changed. The anime lacks the smoke effects around Sakura. The anime gives Watanuki an extra utterance. The anime cuts a line or two by Watanuki, also Watanuki's next line is slightly changed to match the account. His next lines are then cut, and Sakura is given an extra line. The anime technically cuts a line by Watanuki as it blends two separate scenes. In the manga, Watanuki woke up after saying Sakura's name, and the two would meet again in dreams another day. But in the anime, this one dream encompasses all their manga meetings. The anime omits a visual of Phi here. The anime changes Watanuki's lines as the manga lines pertain to a chapter the anime cut. Sakura's lines are also changed for a bit as a result. BGV and CAC, and the anime cuts one of Sakura's lines of graphic detail. Additional CACs and BGV. Several more of Sakura's lines are cut. The CAC adds Sakura nodding no in the anime. BGV and more CACs throughout. Several more pages of Sakura's lines are cut. The anime adds emphasis to Sakura. BGV. The anime cuts a line by Sakura. Watanuki is given an extra line, and the rest of the conversation is cut as the anime moves to Tsubasa Lee's arrival. The anime also cuts an entire encounter with Sakura for this transition. Meanwhile, when this next part does occur in the manga, it is while Watanuki is with Himawari and Domaki in the street. Also, Sakura's face lacks worry in the anime. Watanuki is given an extra line. Watanuki doesn't lose his glasses as in the manga, and Sakura is given an extra line. Watanuki arrives by Sakura's side. In the manga, they were still a ways apart. Sakura says this in the anime, but it looks like Watanuki does instead in the manga. Also CACs throughout. The anime adds the two getting closer in proximity. This was only inferred by the manga. The anime cuts a couple panels of Watanuki's reaction and adds emphasis to Tsubasa Lee standing up. Also, Watanuki is present to see Shaoran arrive in the anime, but in the manga, he started to get thrust out of the dream while shouting out to the two. Lines by Tsubasa Lee are also reordered to later as a result. The anime adds emphasis on the characters and adds lines by Watanuki. This in turn leads to Shaoran uniquely glancing at Watanuki. Watanuki only now has his glasses blown away and now covers those reordered lines. Also, Sakura opens her eyes in the anime, and also there's a CIC, and Tsubasa Lee is given extra lines. In the Tsubasa account, his final lines can be read that weren't in the HOLiC account, but they differ from what we see here in the anime. Watanuki is thrust into Yuko's dream, continuing to cut portions of the scene that started these OVAs. Nonetheless, the way Watanuki entered this dream differs between accounts, and so he is in the void instead of at a door in the manga. The anime adds lines by the two, and then cuts several pages of dialogue as it moves to these lines. Watanuki is given an extra line before a long pause before more unique lines instead of a bunch of dialogue the anime cut. Watanuki's extended lines continue. The anime reorders Yuko's reaction and a line by Watanuki. The anime resumes its unique plot, but does touch on some lines by Watanuki as he lost his glasses, and a line by Domoki is the same too. The anime adds a pedal Watanuki brought back with him and reiterates the unique lines Tsubasa Lee said. The anime adds a unique scene of Yuko and Mokina after the Tsubasa group went to Fei Wong's location, yet the anime doesn't show the damage Yuko endured to send them there as in the manga. And now we move into the Holic Rou OVAs, starting of course with Rou. This covers Holic proper, chapter 92, and the Holic Rou manga series, chapters 1, 8, 10, and 15. And similar to what I was going through with the Kei ones, I'm going based on art pages, not necessarily what the wiki will say is an actual chapter. The episode opens with a CAC of Watanuki as he turns to see Yuko dying. The episode in general omits that Watanuki had just returned to the shop from assisting a customer, although we learn here that this relayed sequence is actually a dream that he's having years later. The anime adds Watanuki walking up to Yuko and adds an utterance. The anime cuts a line by Watanuki. The anime cuts more lines by Watanuki. Additional lines are cut from the conversation, and this is a CAC focused on Yuko. More of Yuko's lines are cut. A couple pages of Watanuki's lines are cut. The anime doesn't show Watanuki gripping his fists as in the manga. The anime adds Yuko looking at Watanuki and an utterance as she closes her eyes. The anime adds a pedal instead of foggy void and then adds a shot of Watanuki. CAC. The anime cuts shots of Yuko. The anime cuts more dialogue. The anime cuts dialogue related to the latest customer and changes some of the food lines or cuts them. More CACs. The visuals of death enveloping Yuko are slightly different between accounts. More of Watanuki's lines are cut and a line is added. This line might be changed slightly and Yuko's line prior was cut. Yuko is given an extra line. CAC. The anime adds an extra shot of Yuko before she dies. The visual of Yuko dying differs between accounts, lacking the butterfly shape from the manga. Watanuki's lines end as Yuko disappears. In the manga, it ended before she disappears. Also CAC. Since this next scene occurs a ways after Yuko died and Watanuki took over the shop, the transition shows Watanuki was just dreaming about Yuko's death and not that the actual death scene occurred at this point in time. Hence, the wake-up scene is unique to the anime. It isn't a change, but it's worth mentioning that the glasses Watanuki wears now were once Chloe Reed's glasses, a gift left behind by him and Yuko, so this episode takes place sometime after Rou Chapter 9. The anime will go on its unique storyline that may or may not be somewhat canon to the manga, aside from parts I'll address later on. While there isn't an exact parallel in the manga, this scene echoes how Domoki has to shop for Watanuki's survival, as the latter can't leave the shop due to the price to pay for keeping the multiverse in balance. The scene's dialogue is adapted in part from this manga conversation but with changed lines to match the anime events. Other lines like this are reordered, but the next lines are unique to the anime. This scene further elaborates upon the work Domoki does under his professor, but it is unique to the anime. The twins juggling references the Mokina beanbags Yuko juggled all those years ago. This line helps specify Domoki's field of study. This episode will focus heavily on the Izuna user, a plot unique to the anime but for which can still be a canon side story. Kohane appears with unique hairstyle, and some portions of the dialogue reference the same Rou chapter where she appears. This includes Mokina's greeting and Kohane's correction on how she addresses Shizuka and why. But the anime gets back to unique dialogue for the most part. Meanwhile, Kohane bought a box of food from a bachan in the anime versus plum wine from a bachan in the manga, though the gift of food was touched on in Rou's Chapter 1. Also, Watanuki will have Kohane return with Shuto in the anime versus strawberry wine in the manga. The anime then continues its unique plot. This conversation further establishes the relationship between Shizuka and Kohane, which is only expounded upon in the anime, but makes sense in canon too. Watanuki's outfit is taken from Rou's Chapter 1. The anime helps establish the professor has no powers. The Izuna mentions payment through words, essentially. This is where the canon would break down for this anime episode, but more on that later. The anime adds a unique Mokina cup that references the HOLiC Kei ending credit sequence. The anime uniquely identifies additional powers in relation to the shared eye. While this isn't in the manga, it may still be canon. This scene references how Himawari occasionally calls Watanuki, that she has married someone, and that she only visits the shop once a year on Watanuki's birthday. This scene references Domiki still holding on to the egg and remembering Yuko. Here is where the canonicity of the episode is thrown out the window, as Yuko never returns even long after 100 years have passed, as seen in Rou's final chapter. So this anime line is a lie. Now we do see a cliffhanger as someone claims to be the dimensional witch in Rei, but this was made long after Rou ended, so it can't be considered for authenticating this line. As such, Watanuki never gets to say welcome back either in canon. Finally, we move on to the Rou Adayume episode, which covers HOLiC proper, chapters 12 through 14, 28, 41, 44, 50 through 51, 59, 64 through 65, and 82, along with Rou chapter 10. The episode opens with Watanuki's intro taken from Rou's 10th chapter, but with visual differences between the two accounts, as the anime focuses on entering the shop, whereas the manga focuses on Watanuki. Also, some lines may be reordered, but it might just be the translation sentence structure. The anime begins its unique scene set with Watanuki meeting Haruka in dreams, as he occasionally does, but this time as Haruka has a wish to be granted. The anime continues its unique plot, but it is worth noting that the anime adds more background to Kohane's studies here that may be canon. And so begins the dream sequence, which will reference and retell several portions of the HOLiC storyline. This first scene adds more detail to when Shizuka wore a kimono as a kid to help toughen his frailty. This next memory is unique, but does expound more upon Haruka's death time than just the mention of it occurring when Shizuka was in 5th grade. That said, Shizuka appears as he does in high school for this memory, so I imagine this is Shizuka erroneously imagining his age in this dream segment, which contradicts what we learn later that his dreams just relive his memories. The anime next covers Watanuki and Shizuka's first meeting beyond the prior visuals or narration by Shizuka to Kohane. This scene reflects their first major encounter in the series proper. Watanuki's first mannerism pose differs slightly between accounts. Due in part from the CACs and BGVs, on this note, I see the window structure differs between accounts. Himawari doesn't blink at Watanuki's line as in the manga. As the CACs continue, Watanuki's reaction motions differ between accounts. He is also given more mannerisms in the anime, but some do match the manga, albeit without the dialogue. This scene reflects the interim as Shizuka agreed to the 100 Ghost Story hosting. This portion reflects slightly the OVA remark Mokina made about Watanuki that a good housewife always has sides ready for unexpected guests, and so establishes that the watermelon Shizuka served that night was his mother's idea. This section also serves as a preamble to Shizuka's archery abilities. The anime now covers the hydrangea incident beginning with CACs, although a line by Watanuki might be added, and then some lines are cut before he disappears. The anime then adds Shizuka's perspective for the incident, reflecting after Yuko told him to just wait and hold the ribbon. Watanuki isn't holding the dead girl's hand here as in the manga. Shizuka is given an extra breath, and how he holds the ribbon slightly differs between accounts. The anime now cuts to when Shizuka removed the eye patch while skipping much of it. The anime then covers the bookworm incident briefly, but the bookworm jumps from the left page rather than the center of the book as in the manga. Also, the anime emphasizes the worm more. The anime, after a brief unique observation line, cuts to the near-death experience but adding more visuals and adding more Shizuka's perspective rather than just Yuko recounting how she communicated with him. That said though, the anime omits Shizuka trying to call an ambulance before Yuko says to bring Watanuki to the shop. The anime now covers the egg payment, which was cut from Season 2, but touched on in the first Rou OVA. But the visuals do have CACs and BGVs. Also, Shizuka places his glass down to the side in the anime, but in between him and Yuko in the manga. The anime cuts some lines and adds a distortion effect as a protective barrier for the memory. Also, Shizuka isn't reaching out to grab the egg in the anime as in the manga until a moment later. The anime then cuts some lines before these next ones, and Yuko turns to face the Watanuki watching the dream in the anime only. The anime then continues its unique plot as Watanuki faces the spirit or spirits, trying to attack Shizuka in dreams. Watanuki mysteriously uses one of Haruka's wards from the bookworm incident here. This one is a replica of the actual bookworm ward of the 4 different wards. How this is possible is confusing as the bookworm ate this one. Sure, Yuko said she drew up new ones for Domuki's storehouse, but the question becomes, is this the one Yuko drew up? Is this one Haruka made and gave to Watanuki in dreams? Is this a dream fabrication based on a memory? Did Watanuki snatch them during the bookworm dream? Or is this just a continuity/animation error to save the trouble of designing a new ward? Here again we see another of the 4 wards being reused, so feel free to guess why or how these are here rather than unique talismans. And since he has 2 more here, I can only assume they are the other 2 from the bookworm incident. The balloon of course references the balloons one could buy from the dream buyer, and Watanuki will say it was the one he sold all those years ago. The anime then continues its unique plot, but does potentially affect canon, as nothing inherently contradicts that Shizuka dreams this way, and that spirits would try to attack him or Haruka, and that some spirits likely are strong enough to attack Shizuka. Watanuki wonders if the reason he and Shizuka never drifted apart despite all that happened to them was because Haruka's influence kept them together, which may be partially true in canon, but as Haruka says, regardless if it was meant to be, the duo together, then that would happen even without his influence. The anime reiterates Yuko's lines from the egg payment, but similarly skipping many lines from the manga. But more importantly, Yuko's outfit is light in the anime, but dark in the manga. The manga gives no hints as to if Watanuki ever knew about Shizuka being given something by Yuko, so it's unclear how canon one could take the seeing of that memory, as even for Watanuki, I would imagine those words nagging at the back of his mind from time to time. This is the final instance of uncertainty with the OVA and manga canon, as Shizuka gives Watanuki a wedding invitation, as Shizuka and Kohane are to be married. The only thing in canon that is for certain is that Shizuka had a child at some point, as we see his great-grandson Sayaka at the end of Rou. This union likely is canon, as is Kohane caring most about Watanuki, but isn't necessarily official canon. So with that is pretty much every change I could find in the XXXHOLiC movie, the Kei Season 2, and the OVAs. This has been excruciating. So, in the next video, we shall go over Tsubasa Season 2, its movie and its OVAs. Unless it's too long and has to be broken up, we shall see. We'll figure out the voting. And after that, we'll see about another poll as to what clamp anime I should focus on next. If you want to see the prior videos, here in the description are links to XXXHOLiC Season 1, Tsubasa Season 1, which is broken up into 2 parts. Thank you for enduring this massive list of changes for what is half the episodes from before. And if what I've seen here shows that there are actually extra camera angle changes or BGVs in Season 1, well, unfortunately, but it's just CACs and BGVs. It's not near as critical. So, thank you for watching this one, and I'll see you in Tsubasa Season 2.